Please listen carefully.
Hello, hello, I am the Ronin Vaughn.
And my name is Harvey, and welcome back to the Harv and Porn Show. Jesus, look at this place today. And Jesus was the right word to use. We have a wonderful...
He's come, he's returned, and he brought...
He has risen.
Illumination and dead trees, wreaths and things. Thank you, Jesus,
and
one and all.
A beautiful crackling, so warm. Love it.
I could put the crackling audio in the background too, but we're not going. Oh,
hey, you could make it a little bit more atmospheric.
Yeah, actually, what the hell? I'll give it a try, and you guys, I'll just turn it up just a little bit, just a touch, and then, people who are watching will have to tell us, because Lord knows I can't, hear what's actually going on in the live stream. There's a little bit, just at a negative 34 decibels for you.
Hello and welcome to the greatest show on the internet. You have joined us for the 16th or 17th episode now? I don't know what we're on. This must be the 17th episode, so it's probably indexed as number 15.
It's a lot. I think, so season one, the final episode of season 1 of the Harv and Pawn Show.
Or do we say the last one was the final episode, because we're not really talking about anything this week. We're just kind of reflecting. Is this the final episode? A Christmas special? Is it its own thing?
I'm counting it Doctor because Who, I showed up.
You want your hard work to be fucking recognized, don't you, Pawn?
I want it to be counted and not starting on -1, you son of a bitch.
As is practically a requirement for most adults in Western culture around this time of year, I will be giving in to the social normative norms of my society tonight, and poisoning myself to the greatest degree.
Thank you,
Oh,
Jesus.
okay, maybe that's a bit too
one
much.
and
Okay.
all, or something.
Yeah, something like
Jesus, bringing the oh, that is a big forearm there. Jesus bringing the miracle of Jack Daniels.
that.
Came
I
the
hope it
night.
wasn't caught on screen just how much Jack Daniels actually went into this class. This is not. I was talking about social norms and accepted behavior. That was outside the remit of the Western culture's social accepted behavior. But
Yes, it's the holiday season, and if you're not getting plastered, what the hell is wrong with you? Do you not know the story of Jesus?
are you perhaps of a different religion to the one which we all subscribe to? Even us atheists who are celebrating Christmas.
I'm totally of the opinion that Christmas is no longer a religious holiday. I mean, for me, it's the only reason I participate in it. Like, I didn't want to participate in it when it was a Christian, when I thought of it as a Christian holiday, and then I finally like got over it and just decided, it's just a societal holiday. It's just
I've
what
never
people do.
understood.
So, fuck it.
I've really never bought into the idea of it being a religious holiday. It's never. I mean, this might be because my family's not particularly religious, but it's never held any sort of religious, not even connotations for me, really, other than academic knowledge that it was originally something Jesus something birthday something. Yeah, it's always just been, hey, we give each other presents. So like I've never had a reason to even doubt
And
that
the
I should be
fourth
celebrating
wise
it.
man brought to him, came unto them in the manger, and brought them a fifth of Jack Daniels. And lo, the Lord was pleased. And the Metatron
pleased.
spoke, saying, let's go down to the pub, have a drink, innit? I like throwing "in it" in there in places where it doesn't belong. I always do that. Go down to the pub, have a drink, in it. As though I'm saying, in the pub, in it, not isn't it. But
Oh,
drink in the pub, in it. How is everybody doing this Christmas? Mosaic Task Force, Kidda Bob, Avelia. Who else? Is anybody else here? I see you're redeeming like channel points, and this is the first day that I've live streamed and seen that that's a thing. How do them work? Explain it to me, people at home, in chat. I'm at home. We're all at home. Wherever you go, there you are. That's for sure.
I'm currently experimenting. I don't really. I'm trying to find a suitably Christmassy looking emote to redeem using these channel points. Oh, this is the most Christmassy suitable one. Is that gonna just work? Ah. No, that wasn't even. That didn't use any of my
Pour
points.
some sugar on me. You get them for watching and participating and spend them on looking good, unlocking emotes, or message and sub-only mode. Oh, okay. Well, then I'll be able to save a lot of channel points because, I always look good. Especially when I'm feeling incredibly ill. Because it has not been a good week for the myalgic encephalomyelitis. My sleep schedule has gone to shit. Thank you, Jesus, one and all. And it's not even like, oh, I got off of a good schedule. No, it's like my body has just decided that this is how it's going to be. And I've been doing this like past 2 days. Basically, I'm awake for 8 to 10 hours and then I pass out from exhaustion for 4 or 5 hours and then I'm back up. So I was up today at 3 a.m., 3:30 a.m., and then I went back to sleep at about 10 a.m., and now I've been awake for 2 hours, so, sometime about midnight tonight, I presume I will collapse again under the weight of my growing fucking genetic malady. It just keeps... Thank you, Jesus, one and all. Thank you for... One and all, really.
Praise the Lord!
I said it once, now I'm just going to continue saying it until the very end.
That's going to be the theme for tonight's show.
A Merry Christmas. We're going to be happy about our fucking genetic and the.
I was saying before the show to Porn over here that we could sort of try and embody like the ghost of Christmas present and the ghost of Christmas past, or just pick whichever opposite ends of the spectrum being like relatively happy with life is, and the my genes are a prison and that he's on over there. Because I've had a great week. I'm doing really good. Really enjoying my job. I have this weird thing with my job where the times when I'm the least happy are when I've just been working for a long amount of time. And actually, I really quite enjoy the more meetings, all the meetings and stuff. And it seems to be the reverse because most people I hear about, or at least you hear about in the media, are always complaining about fucking meetings. You know, oh, I never get any work done. I'm always getting dragged into meetings. So boring to go on for so long. But it's like, I think I quite like all of the people in the meetings. The meetings are usually talking about topics that I'm actually genuinely interested in. And I get to be a source of expertise on something, which is always nice because it means I feel like I actually have a purpose to be in the room for. So
Yeah,
today,
I like our meetings a lot too. Just the Harv and Pawn show meetings. I have a lot of fun just getting together and figuring out what the hell we're gonna do with ourselves next week.
Bavilia, have some
Yeah.
non-religious holiday cheer. Thank you for the 100 bits.
Thank you, Jesus, for giving Bavilia the bits that they then
Praise be.
used to just shit
Hallelujah.
on your name by claiming it's non-religious.
Thank you, Lord.
May you save them from the eternal damnation that they have clearly damned themselves to.
But he died for our sins.
Yeah, that's kind of a contradiction in terms, isn't it? You know, oh, be good or else you go to hell. But wait, didn't he go to hell after he died and unlock the gates? Are you saying that they have like hell 2.0? Is that what they did? They set up another one? Like, it wasn't that they were like morally fundamentally against the concept of hell. It was that Satan wasn't doing it right, you know, and so they've set up a new one. Maybe they privatized hell, you know?
Hello and welcome to Harv and Porn episode 16, Religion. God, isn't that shit fucking stupid? Don't take that out of context.
Says the Buddhist Zen monk.
But I was always taught that Buddhism is not a religion, it's a way of life.
Well, it depends on who you ask, because I absolutely guarantee you from traveling to South Korea, there are people in the Buddhist temples absolutely praying to Buddha that they will be reincarnated in his magic garden and be a flower at his feet for 1,000 years, and they mean it literally. Some of them mean it literally. So Zen, however, is a method and not really definitely not an organized religion there.
Not a dogma.
Yes. Not a Ben Affleck and Matt Damon kind of property movie. As Kevin Smith, that's the name I was looking for. It could have been a good joke, but I couldn't remember the name Kevin Smith. So, it's not a Kevin
Which one?
Smith property. And now it's dead.
Which film are we talking about?
Dogma.
Oh, I haven't seen it.
Oh, you haven't seen Dogma? It's fine that you haven't seen it. It's definitely not. I mean, it's fine. It's fine. It's Kevin Smith's more modern cash. Like, I've already made the money work. Not hungry anymore,
There's a rare, luxury that's afforded to people who have made it so far that they could probably do anything at this point and still be well off for the rest of their lives, isn't there? So I don't really have much to lose. I can just kind of do what I want, and so yeah, I'll take that job if it looks interesting. Isn't that the whole Nick Cage thing? If we're staying on track with actors, I've seen some College Humor videos about his agent. Where he's he's trying to pitch him things, and Nick Cage is just taking all of the worst jobs because why wouldn't he, man? It sounds cool. I love it.
Well, actually, yeah. There's so I watch Movie Bob on YouTube, and he has made it clear on multiple occasions that as much as people like to shit on Nicolas Cage, um, generally forgetting some of his greatest works, and also just like that he's kind of weird and out there, and his performances get crazy. I mean, the fact that he chooses weird things to work on and then gives an interesting, even if it is weird, gives that kind of performance. It's a very valuable thing to cinema and to theater, and you don't see actors taking the kind of risks that Nick Cage does so often. So,
Mm.
especially after Movie Bob put that into perspective that way for me, I kind of reflected on which I like Nick Cage's stuff anyway. Usually, if he's in it, then it's at least like watchable.
Oh
It
yeah.
might not be the best thing ever, but it's like it's interesting. And I just recently rewatched. In fact, oh shoot, what's it called? The one where he's a magician, but he can actually see into the future. Like, uh, that was a really weird one. So he's a magician in Vegas, and the being a magician in Vegas, having a magic act, is basically just using his ability to see into the future by 2 minutes. As long as what's going on involves him, as a way of making money, and also as a way of just fitting in and
Mm.
not having governments researching him and studying
Ha
him
ha
and
ha.
that kind of a thing. But very interesting film that actually doesn't have a lot of dialogue. It's like on this rewatching it recently, I was really surprised to watch that movie. And Next says Mosaic Task Force. Is that it? I like Next quite a lot. I think that's it. Yeah. Um, Very curious to review it and be like, oh, there's actually not a lot of dialogue and conversation here, and it develops itself very weirdly over time. And because it's got this sort of I can see into the future mechanic, it actually has like at least three different ways, I think, of communicating that to the viewer. So either it will be like looping on the possibilities, so you're seeing what might have happened, and then he does it a different way, and then he does it a different way, and he does it a different way, or it'll like there's a bunch of different like visual cinema mechanics that they use to convey that you were seeing a possibility, but because he can see the future, he didn't do that one. He had to
Yeah,
like live
yeah.
that one out and figure out what was going to happen, and so we were watching in his head what he was seeing.
You
Interesting,
know,
not a great film, but very interesting.
that reminded me. So there's an author I've probably mentioned a few times called Brandon Sanderson. Don't know if have I told you about his novels. Does that ring a bell? Brandon Sanderson.
No, it doesn't, but that could just be
Yeah.
me.
So he writes some really epic hard fantasy. So it's hard fantasy in that he defines magic, but he defines magic systems which are rigorously scientific. And so he lays out the rules. This is how it works, and then this is how it always works. Predictably, it's like a science. And
Hmm.
I think I've spoken before about how I love that. But specifically, one of his books, the Mistborn trilogy, actually, the whole concept behind the Mistborn trilogy is that there are certain people in this world who can use magic, and the way they use it is by ingesting metal elements and then like internally burning those elements and getting whatever their specific power is corresponding to whatever metal they are able to burn.
Hmm.
And there's a the fewest people are able to burn. Oh fuck, I can't even remember which metal it's supposed to be,
Well,
but
it's got to
one of
be
them, which
palladium, or well, because that would be rare, and that's why
one
they
of the
dropped
rare
it off your
ones, sure,
card.
yeah. So whichever one it is, one of them allows you to see other people's future actions in terms of like what they are going to do. So you see like a almost like motion blur, but rather than where they've been, where they're going to go. So you can predict exactly when they're going to hit you and know exactly where to block. And, it's impossible to fight someone who is burning this metal just because they know your every move. Except, of course, if you also eat that. And then what happens is that you can see their every move of you seeing your every move of you seeing their every move. And so what happens is that both of you explode out into like a million different possible moves. And so the motion blur is just all around you, and it's impossible to know exactly which one either of you is going to end up taking.
Oh, okay.
So
So
what you visualize,
it
what you're
basically
describing there about
neutralizes. I get it.
what you're describing there about the cinematic tricks of knowing that he's already thought about doing that, and so he's not going to do that, and all the possibilities. There's a mechanic like that in those books. And what's funny about it is that because so few people can use this power on an element that's incredibly scarce, basically anyone who takes it is completely unstoppable. Except during the series, they figure out that there's another metal which can give you half of the effect. So it can make you seem as though you've got the million possible moves. You just can't tell what the other person is going to do. So it's like burning a flare. It just distracts, it just negates their power, but it doesn't
Okay.
give you any power. But they don't
Create this
realize, like, they
mithril.
don't know that you can't see their actions. So it's like the perfect
Hmm.
red herring. Yeah.
Rex Gaze Cheering 50 says, I eat solid sodium myself. It gives me a buzz. Hi, Rex. Solid sodium. Do you explode? Isn't there something like pure sodium, right? You throw pure sodium into like steel or
Tub of
metal
water.
and stuff like that, and it'll just, kind of. I believe
I
they
think
actually do release it
if
for
you throw it
production
into a
cost.
bathtub full of water, just
Hmm.
explodes. So if you ingest it and you throw it into a bathtub full of your stomach full of water, it's probably going to kill you.
Rex says yes. Extension? Extension is very rare, but explodes upon contact with anything.
Oh, anything. That
Anything.
explains
Wait,
why it's very rare.
are you talking about antimatter? And yeah, I guess it does,
Yeah.
doesn't it? Also makes it
How could
strong
you?
corrosive. Well, I would expect, huh? Extension, an element.
Ostension and element. I've never heard of ostension. Did you ever learn your periodic table and be able to recite it as a
Oh
kid?
no.
Was that ever?
No, 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 no.
No. Oh,
No.
Julie can. My girlfriend Julie. She thinks she can recite most of it. Maybe just the first like 30 or something.
Let's see,
But
I
yeah.
do have Google, so I could do, let's see. It'll take me a second, but see if I can't find the lyrics
All right,
to.
you go for that, and I'll just I'll just, yeah, I'll just,
United States,
you
Canada,
know,
Mexico, Panama, Haiti, Jamaica, Peru, Republic Dominica, Cuba, Caribbean, Greenland, El Salvador, too, Puerto Rico, Colombia, Venezuela, Honduras, Guyana, and still Guatemala, Bolivia, then Argentina and Ecuador, Chile, Brazil, Costa Rica, Belize, Nicaragua, Bermuda, Bahamas, Tobago, San Juan, Paraguay, Uruguay, Suriname, and French Guiana, Barbados and Guam. Barbados and Guam. It's very hard to do. You realize how infrequently
Barbados.
or never you say these countries' names. But that's Yakko Warner's Countries of the World from Animaniacs. Just brilliant fucking the way that they did those skits. They also did like, the 50 states and all the capitals as a song, but yeah, that was a particularly good one, especially like the sort of Mexican da 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 da
Yeah, no,
da da da.
I love that rhythm. Just the way it can just keeps going, but it's constantly got the energy.
It's
Thank you,
astatine.
Rex, for the 20 bits, by the way.
Chemists are required to
Astatine.
memorize the periodic table to pass their engineering degree. Well, I should think so. I should imagine so if you're going to be a chemist. An organic chemist.
But wait, so only chemical engineers then, right? So those passing their science degrees don't require, don't have to do that.
You're trying to figure a way out of having to learn the periodic table. What do we do?
I think the easiest way is for me to not do my chemistry degree, probably.
Poland,
Mission
Romania,
complete.
Scotland, Albania, Ireland, Russia, Oman, Bulgaria, Saudi Arabia, Hungary, Cyprus, Iraq, and Iran. There's Syria, Lebanon, Israel, Jordan, both Yemen, Kuwait, and Bahrain. The Netherlands, Luxembourg, Belgium, and Portugal. France, England, Denmark, and Spain. If you've never seen that before, look up Yakko's World by the Animaniacs on YouTube, because it's good. It's good. Paul is
I think I will.
I've been malfunctioning all week, and it continues. I'll tell you what's been helping me though. HBO's Silicon Valley. So it turns out that HBO has been basically fucking crushing it in terms of, I guess because I imagine they were very panicked about the end of Game of Thrones for the past 3 years or so. And so, like, Game of Thrones ended, and, like, just in the past, month or two, the buzz around so many different shows that HBO has now, Silicon Valley is the one that I just watched because Brandon came over and he logged me into his HBO account because he wanted to show me the show. And I'm still logged in technically, so I've watched a lot of it. But Silicon Valley, they've got Watchmen now, a series based on the comics based on the movie based on the comics, based on the graphic novel.
So had you not seen any of Silicon Valley? Because it's relatively old, right? It's
No,
like a couple of years old.
Heard anything? Oh, it is it? Is it? I thought it was like a new.
I don't think it's recent.
Oh
No.
Silicon Valley had its last episodes, is what they test. But I suppose it does have like multiple seasons. I don't know how many I'm in because like that's the thing is I've been in this fatigued state of fatigue, and so like I like wake up and the episodes are still rolling, and I look at the clock and go, oh, 4 hours have gone by. What episode are we on? And then I try and go back to the episode that I think I probably left off on.
Fell
so my
asleep
world
at,
is a little bit fucked. My sense of time and order of things.
I had a hilarious. So the most sleep fatigued. Actually, that might not be true anymore. I've had some pretty bad sleep fatigue recently with this student house that I'm living in. The most I've ever been prior to this year was when I went on a secondary school trip to Moscow, and the bus to go to the train station, to go to the airport, to go to the whatever left at 2 a.m. in the morning. And so it wasn't even worth sleeping, the night before. Just stayed up to 2 a.m. as school kids are prone to do in those situations. So then traveled to Russia and got on the plane and finally checked in at the hotel. And I was sharing a room with my best friend at the time, who I had just introduced anime to. So I'd got into watching anime in a big way at that time, and finally got my friend hooked on it as well. So I'd not slept at all the night before. We spent the entirety of that night watching anime and didn't sleep at all. And there was somewhere in there, maybe at like the 4 a.m. kind of. Oh, no, I might be misremembering. Either way, we watched one episode, decided to leave it there. We went back to it sometime later, and we're trying to figure out which episode were we on when we watched this. I think it must have been episode 4, right? Okay, well, let's just watch episode 4 and see. And we sat there and we watched, and we watched, and we watched. And I think both of us kind of thought that it was an extended flashback. You know how they recap the previous episode at the start of a new episode sometimes?
Yeah.
Well, we watched this 25-minute episode. We got to the end of it and we went,
How much weed had you smoked again?
0. But I think the hallucinogenic effects of a lack of sleep are probably on par, right? To some degree.
Mm-hmm.
And so we watched the entire thing, and then we looked at each other and went, We'd seen all that before, hadn't we? Yeah, yeah, we did. Yeah, that was. I knew exactly what was going on. I don't know why we didn't stop. That was a good school trip, actually. I was in a lucky school that we got to go on some incredible science trips. One to Moscow to go visit to visit Moscow, but also to visit Korolev, which is the space hub of Russia, and also went to Switzerland to go visit the LHC at CERN. So I had a pretty privileged childhood, you could say.
LHC. What level in Super Mario 64 is that?
Oh, of course, you've been completely obsessed with SM64 recently, haven't you? How's that been
Yes,
going?
I've started speedrunning Super Mario 64 Randomizer 70 star. And right now I have submitted, and they're taking their sweet time on this one. They put me up pretty quickly on the last one. But I've submitted my new PB in 70 star, which is an hour and 47 minutes and 58 seconds to, grab 70 stars and kill Bowser. But I've been doing that a lot. I have been enjoying that quite a bit. And I think it might be contributing to, again, like when the ME flares up, a lot of weird things come with it. And I'm not sure if this is the first time or not that this has been associated, but I've been waking up with like heat rash. I'm calling it heat rash on my hands. Little, you know, tiny hard red bumps. Um,
Oh, interesting.
that are just kind of like, weird and a little bit itchy and that kind of thing in certain spots. So I'll have like three or four red bumps over there, or three or four red bumps over there. And I'm thinking that one, it's ME screwing up my body heat and my thyroid. But two, also that I've been doing a lot of this.
Yeah. Small, hard red bumps. That's
And then they
because
go away.
I've had heat rash before, but for me, heat rash is always blotchy patches of red rather than like little nuggets like you're describing. But and they
Yeah,
go away as
mine's
soon as you wake up.
Well, they
Or
go
like after
away,
you wake up.
after I cool down a bit, for the most part.
Mm.
But yeah, it's just been in the past couple of days. They do seem rather familiar for me and my body. When I was younger, I was allergic to the sun. So I come from anti-Krypton. Uh, but I had a sun allergy, just like, too much light, and I would get, heat rash and things like that. So I ended up actually being amongst the first wave of kids to be, experimented on by science. No, to receive a like just at that time being, developed and approved for human use, um, like vaccine kind of a thing where I went in once every 3 to 6 months or something like that, and they'd give me just a little subcutaneous, just under the skin shot. And I got over it basically. Like that treatment actually worked out, and I was able to be out in the sun for more. It wasn't as though I lived in a basement and my precious.
Up in a
Until
castle
then,
in Latvia somewhere.
I mean that's true, but it, it was just the more time that I spent out in the sun, I would break out in a rash, and I was very much, the sun was killing me. So they fixed it. And then they probably
I think
accidentally injected me with myalgic encephalomyelitis at some point in the breast. I mean, that's where it came from. I'm suing.
you were half joking when you said that they experimented on you, but I mean that's let's face it, that's what they were doing. If it was a new treatment, then you were part of an experiment, technically.
It's
It's
yep.
weird. It's funny. So we are collecting data on people as part of work, getting them to record overnight using sensors and stuff. And we never. There's always a little bit of ambiguity about exactly what to call them. Like test subjects. That feels a bit like objectifying, kind of. Ooh, test subjects. So participants, I think, is the one we end up with. But there'll always be that time when we'll just be talking about, oh yeah, and the subject for that. Oh, I called them a subject again, didn't I? I just love this idea of like proper evil scientists, in their lab coats and the people locked in cages, but one of them there is going, and when I cut out the subjects, oh, I call them a subject again, participants' eyeballs. That's another skid. Write that one down.
No, yeah, I can see
Needlessly
that being
politically
a.
correct evil people. That's the skit.
All right, now that is a really good idea. Now you have to write it down though, because I'm
Oh,
too
fine. Okay,
ME
fine.
blessed. but I can see how that would be like a problem just in conversation. Like you've decided and you've made the correct, like that sounded very reasonable when you said participants. We'll call them participants. They're participating in the study, participants. But then when you go to speaking, you say, so this participant, it just sounds so hollow and distant and foreign, and like you're trying to avoid saying something else. So yeah, just saying, this subject responded to, this and such stimuli, and I'm thinking after these tests, what we could do is have subject 13 and subject 27. We could mate them because I think that what would get is very tall but very, slender individual.
Blonde
very good
hair
at
and
lifting
blue
things.
eyes with a good shaped skull. And then if we take that person and another one and mate them, and then they take their children and mate them, then we will distill humanity down to its ideal set of genes, right? That's what you were
Okay,
going
add
for?
that to your idea that they're maybe, or write up a different idea, because I think that's beautiful too, is like the idea that some benign, scientific, technological thing is slowly becoming eugenics without the people noticing that that's what they're doing. You're just slowly getting there. It's just a sleep study, and yes, but we could do this. So I suppose we could, yeah.
You could do that one where it's just every good idea leads to eugenics. It's like you got like 100 people in 100 different disciplines, like one architectural firm trying to figure out the best building size, and just somehow there's always a causal logic chain that brings everything back to
If we could mate the Empire State Building with, say, an arena.
It's like, and they try and describe it in different ways each time. It's like, well, if we were inspired architecturally and we took like the unique design choices of the Empire State Building that make it so structurally appealing, and find an example of an arena building which has similarly important and critical design choices, and then we amalgamate the design that would in a sense code for how those buildings look. And just at the end of every single one of those meetings, where you tell it's just getting there, you
This
have
is
like
our Christmas show.
the same.
It ends
The
in
same,
eugenics.
So you just have the same character who by chance has walked into every single meeting at that moment when it just turns into the eugenics discussion. So you have the story of a guy who's a pizza delivery guy and he gets fired and he goes home, right? So along that entire chain, he's at work just as they're discussing, oh, well, the design of this pizza and the ingredients we use, if we took different factors of the ingredients and combined it, just as he works in, he gets fired. And so on his walk home, he gets on the subway and he sits opposite a guy just as that guy's talking on the phone about how and just as he gets home, his wife is on the phone. And
this is funny because this is essentially what Brandon and I did yesterday. So, having been feeling like shit and just having been, sleeping most of my life away and all that sort of a thing, I had talked to my mom, who has Sjogren's syndrome, and I'm sure I've inherited a version of that basically, and it came out as ME for me. I was talking to her, and she was talking about having a friend who was helping her do the shopping and things like that, and I was like, yeah, I need to call my friends and reach out, and just so that my life doesn't continue being this shit. So I reached out to Brandon, had him come over, and in my text message I said specifically to Brandon, I would like you to come, or I know this is your busy time of year, because he's actually a alcohol. He does beer distribution.
oh, right.
Yeah, for local breweries or smaller breweries that have all come together under a single distributor. But so I know this is your busy time of year, but I would very much enjoy it if you and I got together for the express
Oh, he's there
purpose
as well.
of drinking alcohol. And hey,
Welcome.
dog in a bathtub 29, for the
Yeah.
express purpose of drinking alcohol and doing nothing productive. And so Brandon, who's here in chat with us, comes out, and what do we end up doing? We end up friggin', just whiteboarding and outlining an entire like series of episodes for a project that he's been kicking around, and just we should be Brandon, we should be that unproductive more regularly, and we'll just end up getting so much done. So what we need to do is just copious amounts of alcohol and the express intention to do nothing. Come over, we'll order a pizza, and then we'll just end up outlining an entire fucking season's worth of episodes like we did.
Well, this is absolutely case in point evidence for what we discussed on the last episode about rest is a secret, and maybe take a break and you'll be more productive in the long run. You need to have those periods where you say, all right, no pressure, we're not doing anything. And then you remember what you enjoy about a particular thing and end up blasting out 12 episodes of a show. Or an outline for it, anyway.
Yeah, we basically, outlined all the characters and the arcs and all kinds of stuff for like the first season, and basically know what the general arc of the second season would be too. And it's like we were just sitting here and doing it because we were having a lot of fucking fun kicking the ball around. Just like you and your eugenics thing that you and your company do.
Wait. Wait. We need to do what PewDiePie has been doing with his videos, where every single time he makes a joke, there's a thing that scrolls across screen saying that PewDiePie is making a joke. This is not his true opinions, blah, blah, blah. Disclaimer that just shoots by. So that anyone tries to caption the video, take a screenshot of it, it's like they just get the text. It's funny, actually. There's a similar thing going on currently. I'm also planning to murder babies, and not only to breed them. No, I have a friend and I have just started up another podcast actually called Thoroughly Spoiled, because the world needs more podcasts.
You're cheating on me?
I am cheating on you
You
with a vastly
whore.
more British. So it's the least imaginative podcast you can imagine. We're just critiquing films and TV series occasionally. But the reason we're doing it is just because it's so much fun. Like it was actually quite. I think there's a lot of bad rap for podcasts nowadays because a lot of podcasts don't need to exist, and there's nothing even particularly. It's like, oh, I'm the type of person who wants to have a podcast, so I'm just going to talk about something, right? Those are the kind of podcasts where, kind of like this one. There's no reason for it to exist.
Yeah, pretty much.
I'm kidding, of course. This one not only shouldn't exist,
okay.
but should not be allowed to exist.
Again, back to eugenics. It's always eugenics with you. It just shouldn't be allowed to exist. It's the wrong kind of things, crossing and breeding. God damn it.
There is a superior type of podcast.
This is not that.
It was the same to how this whole show, seeing as it's the end of the year and we're supposed to be reflecting on the show. This whole show came about when Porn sent me an email saying, "Hey, I want to make a show with you. Like, I don't know what the show would be, but I just feel like you're the kind of guy that I could make a show with." And that was what I had with this university friend as well. We just kind of were both mutually aware that, hey, we would be pretty good at doing this critiquing stuff. Like we would enjoy doing that together. When you find someone you're like, oh, that would be fun with you. And so we've been doing it, and it's such a blast. It's like we both have kind of similar-ish approaches to how we analyze movies, enough that we can talk on the same wavelength about stuff. And going away, watching a film and coming back to discuss it with someone, and having both of you independently, like, sussed out a list of the exact same things that were so bad. It's just like, it's such a mental mind romance that we have going on, Ollie.
Yeah.
I love you. I love how your brain works when critiquing Netflix.
I get that because very much, like Brandon and I, when we get together and we start just creative, kicking the ball around and talking about writing projects or trying to figure out, how a story would play out and who the characters would be and what would happen to them and that kind of thing. It makes me want to just start. Um, it makes me want to just be a writer, just be a friggin' creative writer and comedy writer, and sell that to people because like the two of us in a room and bring in one or two more people and boom, like we churn out brilliant fucking shit. Like we
Mm.
might not be able to execute our brilliant ideas
No, but
because
like even just when we can find one person to
budgets
hold a
and
camera, like that having that one person to hold a camera makes a lot of our stuff just like 5 times better. Like the
mm,
cold opens we did, some of them like in terms of wanting to watch them, some of them are our best stuff so far. Maybe not on the writing necessarily, but now that we've, I mean, hell, you could go become a creative writer. Do you ever wonder about the Twitch stuff and think, for instance, like when it before the whole thing that happened, and it was looking like you weren't gonna get through winter, were you thinking kind of, oh, maybe I should find something else to bring in the books? I mean, you've got the portfolio for it. I reckon you might be able to find something.
yeah, I was definitely thinking, but if anything, I'd have to acknowledge that I was thinking just based on what I was doing at the time, and like editing, like mechanically, I'm a good editor. I can edit video together quickly and that kind of stuff. But yeah, I would love to end up being like a comedy writer. That would be a cool thing to do, and not necessarily like, I mean, I'd be interested in writing jokes for like weekly shows like we do, with
Mm.
a group of other writers, that kind of thing. But writing up screenplays or writing episodes for comedically infused programs, that would be very interesting. The only problem is that that kind of stuff tends to take place out in California, and I don't want to even play in that pool. Like they have their own money out there. I'm pretty sure they're printing Cali dollars now or something. Surely they are. Rex, do you have your own money yet? Or is it just that you have such an incredibly inflated and ridiculous economy out there that it seems like you should just break off from the United States entirely?
Become an independent city state. I can see it. Not even city state, California state. What? Just an independent state, isn't it? I forget that your country composition is different to ours. There was a lot of
Yeah,
talk at one
it's
point, back with the original Brexit vote back in 2016. There was talk of London becoming an independent city state. Like, can you imagine what that would have done to England? You've got like all of the economy of our country is focused into a hyper dense point, and that point is called London. And then that point just turns to the rest of the country and goes, "We don't, we don't want to be part of you anymore. We're just gonna be our own thing here." The
you
rest of the
know
country is like, "Fuck, man, we've just lost like 2/3 of the economy with that."
I can actually imagine what that would be like because it sounds basically like what happened to Detroit. Why Detroit is Detroit today? Because it was the engine of the economy, which was the auto manufacturers. Employing a whole bunch of people under unionized workforces that created the economy that grew the city of Detroit to the Motor City and 2 point some million people living in this 120 square mile, and it's getting denser and denser and richer, and so many people working, in on the factory line, but bringing home money, bringing home union wages that allowed them to live nice middle class lives, and then that left. And so what is left is a 120 some square mile city that where people don't there's no jobs that can sustain it, and now instead of 2 point some million, which the city's designed for, there's a population of 600 and some thousand, and the
Mm.
still have to take care of all that land because and all of those people, because wherever people still are in this city, for after people left the area because it was dying, wherever people still are, you still got to pick up their trash, you still got to come when they call the police or the fire department, and the fire department has understood that, but the police are still working on getting that message that you do indeed have to come, no matter where it is or who's calling. But
I
yeah,
like that
that's
insinuation that you've just got the police station there and they're like, right, how do we, what? And the phones are ringing in the background. Hang on, what? There's a crime? Let me call you back. So what are we doing here again? What's the?
I'm sure that's how they play it up. Or Flint, which is where I live, says Ezra. You're in Flint? Oh yeah, Flint. Same story. Same story. Auto
Do you have
manufacturing and
clean water yet? Sorry,
yeah, that's another
it's
thing
probably a
too.
sore point, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean,
Uh,
God, I mean that's like like a travesty and a tragedy and it's incredible what happened there and how it went down and the amount of neglect and like the things that they absolutely knew and the things that they could have known and should have known based on what they already knew and just chose to say it's just a bunch of poor people living on
it's weird, isn't it? Because like
cheaper.
so I don't know much about this. I mean, the extent of my knowledge about Flint is essentially seeing people online replying to politicians who are talking about like, oh yes, we're going to uh, equalize this for this whatever, and then the reply is, Flint still doesn't have clean water. Yeah, it sounds from what I've gleaned that there's essentially a humanitarian crisis going on in this very specific area in the US. But because it's just been happening for such a long time, it's kind of become normal. Like maybe initially it was like, "Oh shit, Flint doesn't have clean water," and now it's like, "Oh yeah, no, yeah, Flint doesn't." Yeah, fact of life. No,
I
that's just what
mean,
they do over there. They just don't
yeah,
have clean water.
just the story of Flint generally has been that for
Yeah.
so long that you could almost argue that it's just one more one more heap of shit on top of all the bad things that have happened in Flint that people have just accepted. I mean, Michael Moore's film Pets or Meat. That was the alternate title for it, though. But are you
Excuse me.
familiar? Because I'm having trouble with the original
No.
name right now, or the
Nope.
actual name. So Michael Moore's first big movie that launched him as a documentarian, socialist documentarian. Michael Moore, first film was Roger and Me, about Roger.
I prefer your title.
Well, that was his title. It was his title, and it was like it was either going to be that or Roger and Me, and he turned this documentary about how like what happened to Flint when the automotive industry just pulled out and fired and broke all the unions and started shipping all of their manufacturing elsewhere, and he turned it into a thing where peppered throughout it's him trying to chase down Roger something like the then big guy for GM, or I believe it was GM, right? Azeroth, but whoever had pulled out. But the alternate title was going to be Pets or Meat, because in the film, which was, I believe, shot in the early 90s or something, so it's not that long ago, Flint was in such a state that they interviewed people who, in order to make ends meet, had started to just breed rabbits. They had rabbit cages in the
Oh, right.
backyard, and so they'd breed rabbits together, and then they had a sign up that said, "Pets or meat, just come and buy our rabbits." And some people were buying them to eat, and some people were buying them for pets, but that was how they were just trying to, scrape by in Flint, Michigan. And that is, a story of Flint, Michigan that, if you start there and then you come up to, and then they dumped a bunch of lead into the water and the water supply and stuff like that. It's just like, yeah, maybe there is an aspect to that is just people don't like shit has been shitty for so long for Flint that especially people who don't live in Flint, it's just like, yeah, but that's just Flint, no need to fix that. It's just how Flint is.
It's weird, isn't it, how humans we acclimatize to things so easily, really. Like nurses who work in care homes that have, one person dies every day. It's like at the start, it must be emotionally wrecking, and then towards the end of your career, it's just kind of like, yeah, no, that's kind of what it is. Yeah. Oh, I had another few people die today. Yeah.
By the way, this is our Christmas and New Year's episode.
Wait, I want to
Merry.
before we move on. Something popped into my head when you were talking about that. Rabbits. Everyone, the impression of rabbits in every single piece of media is that breed like rabbits, right? Rabbits, fucking, they just put two of them together, and you'd come back the next day, and you got 50. You breed like rabbits is the phrase. Why don't we eat rabbits at all? Is it just because they look cute? Is it like we have the objection? Because you think if there's something about them that means that they can reproduce so quickly, that there must be some advantage to herding or farming them, right?
I know
battery rabbits,
and this is definitely not an excuse for why we don't eat, rabbits. I mean, people do, but generally, you can't go to Burger King and order a
rabbit steak. Yeah.
But I do know that rabbit in particular, the meat is like so low; it's like no fat, and because of that, there are health issues like survivalists. It's something that they're aware of. If you're lost in the wilderness and you have to like catch game in order to eat, and you're catching rabbits, that can keep you going for a little bit. But there is so little fat content to the meat that you can still starve while eating rabbit because you're not getting the fat intake that you need.
That's actually really interesting because that implies really that like fat content isn't correlated with like size of animal as you might imagine it to be. Because for instance, duck, I think duck is relatively fatty, right? It's like quite gamey, fatty.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, interesting.
But rabbits are just like all muscle. They are just all friggin' muscle. So, it's a good source of like meat, but the meat is nutrient deficient for a human's diet.
Well, maybe Weight Watchers should be watching this show and considering, recommending some different protein sources to their consumers.
We've got a new version of the Atkins diet we want to pitch to you. All right, so it's all meat, but it's just rabbit.
So I wanna do a hard segue on this topic. I know we've moved away from hard segueing, but I'd like to actually reflect on the year a little bit. So how
can we
do you
do that after a live stream break?
Oh, is your bladder full?
It's not so much my bladder, but I don't know. Like, so the guys, I haven't mentioned this, I don't think, on this live stream yet, but I got guys who are like putting in a new gas main on my street right now, and they were in my basement today, piping in. They had to actually move my gas meter that's on the inside in the basement to the outside because that's how they want it nowadays. So they came in and did all that stuff, and I'm pretty sure they're done and gone now, but they were still doing it when we started the live stream. And right now, after an hour of doing the live stream, it may just be my thyroid gland going crazy again, and the heat and everything, but I feel like I have flop sweat right now, Harvey. Like, I need to open the door to this room, let some of this heat out. Maybe the furnace is stuck on, or maybe they're just like pumping so much friggin' LP gas into my house now that my burners are, I don't know. But suddenly it feels like it's 110 degrees in this room to me, Like, I think, I feel like I'm in a jungle at this point.
I think it's probably just that your house is on fire.
Oh yeah, no, that's it. We should definitely take a live stream break then.
Can you smell smoke, or are you having a stroke? That's a rap lyric I might use.
It's pretty depressing rap. All right, let's do that. Let's go away for 7 minutes. Give everybody a chance to wash the flop sweat off because suddenly it's really, really hot. It might just be the fire behind us. That's right, Kidda Bob. It could just be the fire. It is blazing.
I'd say it's probably just me.
I would say that there's nobody here but us, Charles Dickens. We're going to take a 7-minute live stream break. We'll be back thereafter. Stay with us. Harv and Pawn, not out. I am the Ronin Vaughn, and we are
And my name is.
back.
Oh, yeah. That's supposed to be my lead on. You can't say that phrase. That's the trigger phrase.
I'm
You start
sorry.
the show by saying, "Hello, I am the Ronin Pawn," and then I start when you say Ronin, so that it roughly times up because of the Discord lag. You can't do this to me. You can't.
Harv is
You set
hashtag
expectations.
triggered.
Yes,
So,
most appropriate thing. So, before you deviate us onto a different tangent, first, how sexy are you feeling? I mean, how hot are you feeling right now?
So it turns out the reason why I feel like I'm baking in here is because the dudes who were working on the heat cranked my thermostat up to 80 something, presumably to, test and make sure that it was coming on, and then they left. And then
And just left it
and
on.
just left it on. So I'm pretty sure the furnace has been blaring heat for about the past half an hour, probably. So they also, as employees of the power company, managed to make themselves a little bit more money there. But yeah, it was. I think I usually keep the house around like 68 or something. I don't think I even get up to 70 on the heat, and 80 something. Like the cats look like they're tired from being hot.
Can you? I wonder how much extra money a power company would make if every time they sent anyone around to any house for any reason, before leaving, they just cranked up the heating, opened all the windows,
It's in
crank up the
direct
heating,
it's in
turn on
direct
all the appliances.
contrast to all of their like things that they send me in the mail about, how to make your home more energy efficient, and congratulating me on the fact that my home is in the top 10% regularly in this area.
Wow,
Were
I'm
you just
impressed.
doing like some impressive mathematics? It sounded like you were figuring out. Wait, I'll tell you exactly the amount of LPF that you get out of it. 82 for how many hours?
I'm incredibly impressed that your house is in the top 10% because your house is quite an old house, right?
Yeah, yes, it is. It's 1929 it was built. But everything that was in here was gone when I bought it because it had been sitting here and scrappers had taken the furnace, the electric box, the water main, the water heater. So everything that I have in here is new. New water heater, new furnace, and the furnace is a California rated furnace because in California they have higher regulations about energy use and stuff like that. So for $500, I got a 500 and something. I got a dent and bang special on one of them that had been damaged in shipping. That is like a 90 some percent efficient furnace, California rated for use. So, and it's probably a little bit big for this house too. It's got 4 massive burners on the inside of it that really crank out the heat when it kicks on. But yeah, between that and the fact that I've rerun all of the electrical myself and sunk my own ground rod, and that I'm cheap as shit, and so I run the heat at
That helps.
68, and I'm very aware of what lights I have on in the house at what time and whether or not they need to be on. Yeah, just being stingy. For I am the ghost of Christmas stinge. Which is Christmas, and you wanted to talk about Christmassy things finally. Why did you
Well,
bring in
no,
put
not
this wreath
really,
behind me, by
actually.
the way?
I
Oh,
want.
what did you want to
I'm
talk
more.
about?
I wanted to talk about 2019,
Mm.
which is actually I don't. I
Let's not.
don't
Let's just not mention it. Like it's a time. It happened. Let's just move on. 2019.
no, no. Fuck you. I want to talk about 2019. It's been 2019 has been an important year for me. A lot of milestones and a lot of changes, I think, to my outlook and kind of to me. It's been a formative year, I would say. 2019. So what's quite convenient for me as well is that my birthday's in January. So 2019 also means this year of me being 21 years old. So I finished my third year of uni in 2019. So I became a graduate level computer scientist. I haven't graduated for reasons that I'm not quite sure stand up to inspection. Essentially, I'm on an integrated master's course. So I still have this year of my industrial placement and then do my master's, and then I'm allowed to say that I'm a graduate. But I'm a graduate. That was interesting. I feel like that's never felt real. It's never felt like I've been through the university process because of that, because of not graduating. But I'm a university graduate level computer scientist. I started doing YouTube again after a couple of years of a break. I was just looking back through my YouTube videos that I've uploaded, and the closest to bang on being 1 year ago that I uploaded to my channel, Daryl the Manure Spreader Origins RP with RP Episode 1.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, unlisted because these were the original uploads from when I made those
I was gonna say,
videos.
what?
Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah, no, these are all unlisted. And then Make a Show with Me, Mirror Reflection, Key In, Rough Cut,
That's right. We've
all
been
out
working
cold
on this
opens.
thing for quite a while now. And we
Yes,
ran
we
out of
have.
content, pre-made content pretty quick too. It's surprising. You think that if it takes an hour to write, it takes an hour to read, but it doesn't.
Mm. And if it takes a year to produce in total, you'd think you'd have a year's worth of content. But in reality, we had, I was going to say about, what, 6 weeks? But in terms of minutes,
Maybe.
it's 6 times, like, 2. We had, like, 12 minutes of content to speak for. Maybe 3, maybe 4 to be generous. 24 minutes of content.
Mosaic Task
Uh,
Force says in 2019, KSP2 and Kerbal Polar Expedition 4 were announced. So there's
and
a
I've been
thing.
thinking about those. Uh, I'm gonna just forget about Private Division. I've decided. Fuck them, I'm not gonna try and
Taking
shoot
my
for.
advice.
Yeah, well, essentially, yeah.
Fuck
I mean,
'em.
you were a bit of a proponent of that actually on the show when we discussed it, but I'm not gonna subjugate it to hoping to get a pre-release copy. As nice as that would be, I think I was overstating the importance of it to myself, and I don't want to have come to March and still not have organized anything. So over Christmas, I'm going to at least do a little bit of thinking about the event. I think it's going to be summer 2020,
Hmm.
so I can start telling YouTubers exact dates and things, and Twitch streamers and whatnot. Yeah, 2019. So I started my, first proper job this year since not graduating university. Been at my job for the past 4 months now, and as I said earlier in the show, I'm enjoying it. It's good. I think this company suits me, and I've got something which I'd like to pick your brains on a little bit actually, because I think I know what you would say, but I'm interested to test my mental model of your personality, having got to know you over the past few months. I
Okay.
have a bit of a dilemma. So, to be a well rounded software engineer, computer scientist, these industrial placements are uh, usually in part to get you some teamwork experience in a practical, commercial, professional context, right? So, you'll find a lot of us who go to big companies or try to go to like Facebook and Google and get the real software developer uh, experience. For my company, I couldn't have been further on the opposite end of the spectrum. It's just me, essentially. There are other people in the R&D team, but I'm working on my project, and so far I have been the only team member on that project, right? So I'm more a project manager. I'm as much a project manager as I am the developer, which has been great in its own way, but it's not given me that teamwork experience. And so there's the ghost of being a well-rounded, getting the experience at my young age and all that stuff, which says, okay, you've got this year under your belt. Now, when you graduate, go for a bigger company. Get a higher, probably higher payroll, but also B, get that experience that you're lacking from this company. And that's all well and good, but I really like this company, and I know they would take me back to some degree. So part of me goes, okay, right, well, I think they'll take me back. So I can try and go to a bigger place and get some experience there. And if it doesn't work out, I'll come back to this one. But part of me also goes, man, I like this company. I just want to work here. I'd be okay just spending the first 15 years of my career at the same damn place if it continues to be like it is. So I wonder what do you think about this? How much should I care about trying to become this ideal where I've had experience in different companies and seen every single aspect of the comp sci. I'm not pitching it very well. Bear in mind, obviously, I'm biased in how I'm presenting the arguments to you. But yeah, what do you think about this?
Just keep doing what you're doing till you're doing something else. Yeah, I'd say, it's like there's a very good point to having the experience of being an Indian as opposed to a chief, and it sounds like you're more in a chief role. I mean, you're an Indian in a larger company, but when it comes to the day to day, you're experiencing things where you're setting your own schedule and doing the things that need to be done, and nobody's breathing down your neck. So there's definitely value to being a Indian and being someone who's following more than leading, and who's under the direct supervision of someone else who has their standards. And then but like those experiences are valuable only because of how shitty they are, and you're going to have to learn how to deal with them. You're gonna have to learn how to deal with the boss that like wants this thing and that thing, and it's like you're sitting there going, but that doesn't make sense. If I do that first, I'm gonna waste a bunch of time. If I do this, then it's like half done into the other thing, and then I just pick that up. All right, but that's how he wants it, and so yeah, I just do what you do until you're done. Do I match
The
your interior
Yeah, no,
model?
you do, and to be honest, it very well aligns with my interior model of myself as well. But I had an interview. So, case in point, in terms of being a chief rather than an Indian, which is a weird phrase. What the fuck? Uh, where does that come from? Is that a phrase people say? Chief
You
rather
know
than
what?
Indian?
I think I inherited. I think it is very like corporate lingo kind of thing. But like we got too many chiefs and not enough Indians here. Too many people who think they're in charge of shit. You guys
This
need to learn to
shit.
follow.
This is why we keep on exporting all those jobs to India. God, it's just all these corporate executives going, "There's not enough Indians," and then the lower downs are going, "Shit, shit, off freelance some work to India."
Do you think
So
he'll? What? I've got a Pakistani guy. Do you think that's okay? You think that'll do for him? Just like
no, it
completely
must be
missing. They're not
Indian.
understanding the language. Like, what does he mean, Indians? Shit.
Yeah.
Um.
So, case in point of me being more the chief, I've been conducting interviews for my company, which is not something you get interns to do. So,
mm.
today interviewed a few people, and it's been like hallelujah, kind of, because we've waded through so much shit of inexperience that finally we got some people who actually know what they're doing in, and it's been really enlightening. But one of these interviews was a guy relatively in a similar position to me. He's almost the me if I went to a bigger company, and so he did his computer science degree. He's worked in a few uh, companies where he's been managed and he's been in a team and all that bollocks that I've not experienced. Uh, and so it was a bit of a wake up call because we pitched the project to him, which is to take over the development of this app, which already exists. It's got a year and a half of expertise behind it, and you take over the development of this and make it work and keep it going and allow it to do a million new things, and you won't get any support. No one's going to hold your hand. You have no manager, essentially. It's your project. Just fucking do this thing and make it do it well. And so to us, that's all kind of because we've been living and breathing this stuff for the past, or this I have for the past 4 months, and they have for the past year and a half. It's just kind of like, oh yeah, could you work on this app? To him, it was like he had a knee jerk, PTSD reaction. He was like, so what team size would I have? One. Who would be? So I could talk to my manager. No, no. If there's a problem, you fix it. What? But that this is awful. You can like just couldn't. He was just appalled. He was absolutely appalled by it, and it was funny as well. This guy, uh, I had to give him credit for either a certain degree of obliviousness or just matter-of-fact ballsiness, because one of the first things after we kind of explained our company to him, one of the first things he said was, one of the first things we asked him was, "So, here's the app. This is how the app works. Do you have any questions, or does anything about this interest you? What do you think?" First thing he said was, "Who was it who decided you should use that tech stack?" And pointing fingers at each other. This guy here, he was managing the project. Well, the tech stack you've chosen is fucking bollocks, and I wouldn't use that in a million years. I'm exaggerating a little bit, but essentially, he just questioned the entire route the project had gone down for the past year and a half, and said that, well, you shouldn't do that. It's like, you've walked into this interview where we're trying to see whether you're suitable for the position, and the first thing you've said is that the role that you're taking shouldn't exist. you know, it was ballsy as hell, and I have to give him credit for it. We've decided not to go with him in the end, partly for not for that directly, but for generally his fear of taking ownership and doing the whole thing himself. But yeah, interesting seeing that different perspective, because I'm on the other end with the only experience I've ever had is essentially either in a university team, which is not really a team at all, or working by myself on an entire project. And so, if I'd been on that side of the table and they'd said to me, "Here's an app we have. Do you reckon you could take it over?" I'd probably just be like, "Yeah, yeah, sure. That sounds cool. Sounds pretty interesting. I'd like to have the opportunity to take control of all that stuff and have full ownership over the whole stack."
Yeah, that's before I forget too, because it keeps coming and going in my head. In future, and I'm sure you have no direct control over. Well, I'm not sure, but I imagine you have no direct control over this. But the way that you get in like better quality like people and don't have to go through so many people who don't know what the hell they're really doing and don't have the experience is just to massively exaggerate the requirements in the listing that you post, because when I have looked for jobs in computers and in programming and stuff, because I have looked in the past, I have always been like startled and turned off and scared away by the listings that you see, because it's like, we need someone who's familiar in C++, COBOL to do an SQL database and has 3+ years in, this, that, and the other thing. And they're like putting all these things together. And I'm looking at that going, so you want someone who basically has been in the industry for 40 years and who you would have to pay, hundreds of thousands of dollars to for this level of experience, and you're not offering that.
5+ years of experience in Kotlin, which is a language which has only existed for a couple of years.
But yeah, like what I realized, eventually what dawned on me is that most of these jobs, and this is a general rule in job hunting too, just whatever field you're looking for, like they are trying to scare people off so that they won't get people who feel inexperienced and who are just like, well, maybe I can do that job, maybe I can't, and then they'll come in and kind of waste your time. So if you actually, are in the field and you know what you're doing to some extent, even if you don't match the requirements, you probably should respond to the article where it says we need 3 years of this and 7 years of that and 5 years of the other thing, because like they don't necessarily mean it. And every job that my mother, like she's a big proponent of this as well, because she says every job that she's ever had, in the listing it said we need you to have the experience for this, that, and meeting planning and da 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 and da 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 da. And then she went in, she interviewed for it, they liked her, they hired her, she was open about the fact that she didn't have that level of experience, and then she did the job and she was able to do the job. So if you think you can do the job, apply. But if you are an employer and you're trying to hire people and you don't want to waste your time in the interviews, you should absolutely heavy stack your requirements of experience, and then wait for the people who are smart enough to like look through that and say, okay, well, I think I know what they're actually asking for.
Well, to answer your question about whether I have any impact on this, I do. Funnily enough, which again is not something that, as an intern, I would get in any other company really. But we're in a relatively tech scarce area, and we're struggling just to get anybody through the door for an interview, let alone artificially limiting it with like
Oh.
needlessly high requirements.
Hmm.
The reason at all that we were wading through people who didn't know what they were talking about was because the only local source of of mass recruitment for software talent was a coding boot camp called Code Nation, which they have a few places in the north uh, west of England, but they have one in Chester, and it's a 3-month long programming course for people who have never done programming before. So they say like, "Oh, we'll get you to graduate level programmer," and then you get people who think they're experts in JavaScript but really don't know anything about anything.
Hmm.
So there's a degree of the Dunning-Kruger effect where we ask for JavaScript experts, and someone who's never done coding before has coded in JavaScript for 3 months and has learned everything that they ever knew existed about JavaScript. And so, fucking hell, I know everything that I know exists about JavaScript. And what they don't realize is that they don't know what exists. Everything that they know exists is like here. But
Yeah, and
yeah, no, we
Mosaic
have the
Task
opposite
Force
problem,
says high
really.
requirements in job postings only leads to applicants that lie. And that's like, I don't think it's a good practice. I just know that it's a practice that is done. And
Mm.
the more that I
Well, it's
think about it, the
very
more.
useful if if I'd say if you were Google or Facebook or any company with any weight, that people are seeking you out to employ, because we're a company of 18 people who is in a very niche healthcare sector.
Hmm.
uh no, if you have any weight to your company at all, to the point where anyone is looking to have a job with you, then I think that there's definitely a benefit to what you're saying. At
Yeah,
least don't make it seem.
if you're overwrought with
Yeah.
applicants, then you jack up your, the level of experience you're asking for, but you don't like you don't you still have the same like rate of pay if you're advertising that like 26,000 a year or whatever it is that's going to be per year for the position. You maintain that, but then you just ask for a whole bunch of stuff, and the information that's between the lines is that we don't really want all that stuff, but some people, we have way too many applicants, so I think that's
I've got
done
to
a
say,
lot. And if you are like, coming into the workforce, or, having to look for a job and you haven't like thought about that stuff before, think about that. Be aware that that is part of what goes on in applications, because people who are very sought after, where they have positions and people want to work for them, they're trying to reduce the number of interviews that they have to take, and they might just do that by making the bar so high that it's kind of a game that they're playing to only get the people who are smart enough to know that the bar isn't really that high.
it's all arbitrary cutting down of the masses, isn't it, really? I mean,
Hmm.
can you imagine how many applicants Google has every year? I
Three, at
I've got
least.
to say as well, when you do this thing occasionally when you're talking, that you get real close to the mic and you just go like this. And fuck, man, it sounds so good. And I need to get some equalization on my microphone, because I imagine when I do that, it's entirely the bass of my voice that is carrying that through, and not a good EQ. I
It's
need to figure
definitely
that out.
very rich and bassy.
So I want to flip this. I've kind of given a brief summary of the most meaningful things that came to the top of my head of my 2019. What has 2019 been for you?
Honestly, when you started talking about it, I immediately started like trying to think of that, and it's not. I don't see. I don't know. I don't know, basically. Like 2019 is nothing in particular for me. And a lot of things have
Well, I
happened, I'm
mean,
sure. Like if I think about the different things, the drama around the GD, I became a speed
yeah.
runner at the end of last year, and at the beginning of this year, I was applying to GDQ to get in, and I was selected for a few moments, and then I was unselected. So like you could say I became a real speed runner this year, and was nearly on this, international stage, and then everything that happened around there. So it was very like interesting tale of, another thing that happened in my life that's like, yes, that was a thing, whether for better or worse, it's a story to tell. um my father has, come and gone here, living with me and then not living with me, and um like lots of
Oh,
things have happened.
when did your dad start living in your house? Was it since the beginning, or how long's that been now?
No,
Or what? How long was that?
I mean, he's been coming and going and, living with me off and on, and more on than off since he, first moved in, but it must be 2 years or more now.
Mm.
And I've owned the house, I suppose, for uh, over three. I would think that this would
Mm.
be more than my third year. Yeah.
And now he has his Empire Strikes Back. Is it? He's got a Star Wars reference van on it that he's
And you
trucking
know
around
what?
America
He
in.
did all this work on, so he bought a van, and the van had like a spare tire thing on the back and a spare tire cover. And he did all this work to make this UAW logo, the United Auto Workers, like, or the union for the auto workers. Um, he did, but it was a fake logo that looked like the UAW logo, but on the outside was a bunch of stormtroopers marching around, and he gave it a name. I've got a picture of it somewhere, but he basically did the shape so that you'd look at it at a glance, and if you know that logo, you go, oh, it's the UAW. He's got a UAW logo on the back, but it turned out to be all, Star Wars inside references and themes, and there was a Death Star in the middle of it that you'd have to like look hard to notice, but it's there. He did all that work, and then within like a month of having it on the back of that thing, like a piece of paint fleck, like a big chunk of the paint flecked off or something. It just took a huge,
Ah,
like a big chunk of what he'd done off. So he didn't have it
ah.
long. He wasn't that disappointed about it because, he'd done it and he'd gotten the pictures and stuff. And he'd already had like other ideas for other things that he'd like to put there instead. But um, yeah, so he's, I've been in my house for 3 years. I am less than $3,000 away from paying it off. I'm down to like 2,800 bucks, I think. I think
Oh
it's
shit.
2,700 that and it's not really paying it off as much as it is repaying myself the costs of buying it and then upgrading it. But yeah, I don't know. I think of 2019 and I don't think of anything, you know, it's just, and I don't think it's like about 2019 at all. I think it's just how I think these days, or how I see, life. Like
I mean,
I find it
so I
difficult to
was going
reflect on
to.
a period of time and feel like, oh, well, these are the things that happen and that defines it. Um,
Yeah.
but there's a big difference in the fact that, like, you know, you completed multi-year experiences that you'd been working, graduating from, and, moving into the
No,
workforce as a
not graduating. No.
professional. Yeah. But moving into the workforce as a professional in the industry that you'd been training for all these years. And, me, I'm a year or three older than you, I think. And the
Yeah,
the
yeah. Tell
sort
yourself
of
that. Yeah.
the sort of life and years that I've got on me, it's just those major things have come and gone, and I'm just, in the language of speed running, I'm just grinding it out at this point.
Well,
Grinding it
I
out
mean,
for
to
new
be honest,
PB.
I've got an awareness of this anyway, just because I I very nearly didn't ask you how has your 2019 been. I was about to preface it as And really, 2019 is an arbitrary start and an arbitrary end. So, the more appropriate question is, how do you think that this period of your life, whatever you view as one era as being, how has this chunk been, or how is it going? I suppose.
Well, on that term, it's just fine. But again, it's like not even that is really interesting, because it's just fine. I mean, I'm having some really bad days right now from ME, but the past year has been relatively good, I suppose, or maybe it hasn't. Like living with this disease as it is, I think it has also like just rebuilt me to not think of any to not sort of put a period of time together and judge it, because if I looked too hard at well, those were a bad 3 months, I don't want to know that, so I just don't look at it. It's just
Mm.
whatever it is. And along with like the Zen Buddhist kind of aspect, there is at this point in my life, it's very hard for me to really think of a period of time and say and feel as though it's defined by anything. Whatever it is right now is what it is, and it's what it's always been. And as soon as this moment is done, it never existed. Is kind of how I live now. I've always had trouble too, just as a human being, like trying to keep track of when things happen. I'm horrible with like dates and times and the years that I did this or that or the other thing. But yeah, at this point in my life, it would be bad for my mental health to focus too much on, anything really. So whatever today is what today is, and I don't have room for anything more or less. And
Well,
it's certainly not that's like a something that I recommend or that I think is particularly good or particularly bad. It's just it is what it is, and that's when you started talking about it, I'm like I briefly started to think, oh yeah, okay, so what would my 2019? Because I knew it was going to come there, and just drew a complete blank. And
well,
I'm happy to draw a complete blank.
well. I'll tell you what. One of the absolute highlights of this year for me has been the past 4 months of being able to sit down every week, twice a week, with an intensely intelligent, funny, and profound man, and to be able to talk to you and get to know you and have you as a friend and do this show with you and make something that I look at and I'm always eternally, continually impressed by the sheer quantity and quality of bits of everything that we've made. And so I'd say, at least if 2019 isn't anything of significance, I'd hope that you feel similarly about the past 4 months, at least.
That's probably been nice for you.
You motherfucker! I take it back. Fuck you.
My sincerity and vulnerability, you bastard.
You ungrateful piece of shit. I opened my heart. This is what I get.
No, yeah, it's been I mean, this is the closest that, I've ever come to sort of like what we took something that just needed to be and that we both wanted to do and didn't know even the shape and the form of it and made it, be a thing. And I'm actually looking forward to in 2020 reshaping it yet even more, you know. I am incredibly impressed by what we have done, the sheer volume of content we've put out and the way that this has contributed to getting ideas that we have both had off of the fucking whiteboard and into reality, because we got a show to do, we got a schedule, we're.
It's such a motivating thing having you and having a schedule, or at least the idea of a schedule and the idea of there's a deadline. So it's because none of it is even set in stone, but just I'm a big believer that being accountable to something external is a great motivator, and it's a great way to force yourself to be productive, because as much as it's probably long term ideal to draw all of your motivation from internal factors, just fucking sometimes you need someone else to be accountable to. And even though we don't take that particularly seriously, it's still plenty, the enough for us to clearly have been able to do all this. And I
Well, and
think we've
I
done a
feel like
really fucking good job.
most of the ideas, I don't know if I thought about this, specifically if I'd find it, but I know that like a lot of the ideas, at least that have sort of come from my side of the table, by the time like I'm done writing them, they're not that anymore because you've suggested something. Just having someone else who has a mind for this, who knows how this works, and who you can bounce something off of and be like, I pulled my list up of concepts that I've got, loosely underdeveloped things. And I'm like, this, that, and the other thing. And you're like, oh, so what if it was like this? And then it's like, yeah, that's way better. Let's do that. And it just evolves and becomes something more than you knew, and also gets off the page and becomes something that's done. And I have been filling, literally like the whiteboard in the hall, with ideas for 3 years that I've lived in this house, and the number of ideas that have come off of that whiteboard and become something real is, I could count on one hand, that have like, that went from being a really good idea to something that I made and finished and was satisfied and done with and moved on. And since we started doing this show, I've got a list in a database that just keeps getting longer and longer and longer. And
Mhm.
at this point, twice a month, I know that I'll be reaching to that list, and one of those ideas becomes a thing that isn't just an
Mhm.
idea and gets to like grow into its full potential. So that has been like, this working with you has turned into like actually producing comedy sketches in a way that I don't think I would have ever done alone. I
Mhm.
wouldn't have like gotten myself to do it. It always would have been something that's like, yeah, I want to do that. I've got these comedy ideas, but I never would have done it. And just knowing that I'm going to like hand it off to you and you're going to add, you to it. And it just makes it real and makes it happen. And now we both have this backlog of freaking, you know, live action green screened comedy,
We've just
written things.
and just in this stream, we've added about 3 ideas to the whiteboard.
Yep. Yep.
There is something awesome, like Dog in a Bathtub has just said. Brandon, that's what it's all about, turning ideas into tangible things. Why my I keep a list. I've only started keeping a list of ideas for videos since actually we started the show, funnily enough. It was partly, it was going to happen already to some degree, but I think this is quite the message of the whole thing as well. But I think you actually finally got me to do what I should have been doing all along. But I keep another list which I've been keeping for 2 years now, since the start of 2018, which is called interests over time. And I just keep track of those ideas and those things that I'm interested in, that really resonate with me to some degree over time. And I tell you what, start of 2019, it was all maintaining productivity over longer periods of time, seeing projects through until they are finished, thorough project planning, animation. Okay, but it was all this stuff that this is what I was thinking at the start of 2019. And funnily enough, actually, I don't know, is my text flip? I always forget whether, is that even going to focus? No, it won't
Oh.
focus because I told it not to focus. Never mind.
Mm.
Uh, but for the first 3 months, productivity was one of the things I was most interested in. And having done this show with you for 4 months now, I can say that I have learned something about being productive and turning ideas into tangible reality. And fuck, man, it's that when you do it with someone else, it's so much more enjoyable and it's so much more likely to actually
Absolutely.
work. and to actually get made. That's got to be the takeaway, I think, of 2019 for me. But it's been fantastic, and I also don't see this ending anytime soon, really, unless you bugger off and decide you got better things to do than make shows with me.
Well, I will be moving
I
to
think
Spain.
Spain, not England. Oh.
I couldn't afford it. I'm waiting for Brexit, and then maybe I could afford to move to England. You know, after your dollar, the GBP drops a bit, and you know, we were actually
Yes, well,
we were we I was saying that to Harv yesterday or the other day or something like that. You know, ironically, the only way that I could possibly afford to, you know, migrate to England would be after Brexit completely diminishes the strength of your dollar, which seems to be exactly the opposite of what the people who are in charge of Brexit want to happen, but that's what's going to happen. Now I can afford to actually live in England after the GBP falls.
and that reality will soon come about with Boris Johnson as our retaining, continuing Prime Minister. I voted Labour for the first time, actually, funnily enough. I'd been voting right wing, which is for England, it's kind of central-ish, you know, in comparison to America. For the past however many years that I've been allowed to vote, but I voted Labour for the first time, and I was really part of it. This wasn't the reason I voted Labour, but in my mind, I think I had this idea that it's really close this time, and I think it almost counts. As much as your vote will ever count, this is the one where it actually might count. And Boris Johnson won in like what can be described as a bit of a landslide. So I was completely off with my mental model of the relative perception of this election.
Yeah, I don't know what I
He's got the biggest
was.
majority now that the Conservatives have had in this country for many years. So
Yeah, I'm not sure like what I was hearing while I was hearing it. I was watching, you know, in the background I had a live stream going of Dan Hardcastle, and you know, they were watching the whatever. They were watching the gaming thing, but they were talking politics because that's what was going on that night too. And I remember hearing like, maybe is this right? Like Labor got 26,000, Boris Johnson 160,000 or something like that.
probably, yeah, it was about that ratio in the end.
Like Jesus God.
Which is weird because from my point of view, I don't want to talk about politics too much, but I voted for Brexit. Dun dun dun. And a lot of that was because it was actually the first. I think it was the first. Yeah, no, that's how I feel about it to some degree. I think it was the first time I was able to exercise my democratic right to vote, and I voted for fucking Brexit. Uh, and it was largely because of my area that I lived in. All of my friends were, conservative. My parents are conservative. Uh, so there was a degree of environmental influence. And I think also, I've been told this. I'm a little old beyond my years in some ways. And I think from a very early age, I gained a bit of a cynicism that even though I don't have there's a degree of like, oh, all university students vote Labour in this country because they're just idealistic young fools who don't understand what reality is all about. And I think I kind of bought into that even before I went to university. And I was like, oh, I'm not going to be one of those idealistic young fools. I know how reality works. I will vote Conservative because it's the conservative thing to do. And so there were a number of factors, and also just particularly Brexit was misleadingly campaigned for, and had some very good propaganda go into it. So since then, it's kind of been like in first year of university, I didn't tell anyone that I voted for Brexit, which is how I imagine some people who voted for Trump might have felt in that first year. It's a bit of a different level in my mind, but you go to university where everyone is left wing, and you voted for Republican for whatever reason. And there's a degree of shame that you feel you should feel, and so you don't tell people. So I told people that I spoiled my ballot in protest. I couldn't decide, so I went in. I just drew a cross outside of any of the boxes. And for the first year, anyway, until I kind of grew a spine and told people the truth in the second year and then onwards. But
Yeah, in this country,
uh,
we're very, very familiar with feeling awful after voting and just being embarrassed for what we voted for. That's just like that's just the general way. Like nobody
yeah.
got out of the election between Hillary and Trump. No one who voted within the two main parties without feeling embarrassed by what they did. I mean, I'm sure there were some diehard supporters on one side or the other, but in
Die
like
Hard
my
Texans. Yeah.
friends, who uniformly voted for Hillary, like they all described, walking out of the booth and just feeling dirty and like they wanted to throw up a little bit. Like it was just like, this is what I gotta do. I don't really want this person, but I don't want the other person
Mm.
getting in. And yeah, that's
Well, I
just
have
our
some
politics.
personal. So I said my parents and my parents are conservative. My whole family is, as far as I'm aware, and in particular, my dad and his dad uh, hate. Well, not hate, but strongly disapprove. Let's say of Jeremy Corbyn, who was our left-wing Labour Party leader. And the reasons to disapprove of Corbyn are supposedly numerous. Uh, the one in particular that I think is the most compelling, perhaps, is that. So I don't. Do you know much about? We were talking about Ireland and Irish accents before the stream, but do you know much about the IRA?
I'm familiar with their work.
Their
Through the
work, yeah,
90s, I'm familiar with
uh,
their
killing innocent people, yeah. Uh, so terrorists, essentially. Some might slander me for saying that, but essentially they did some terroristic things. And Jeremy Corbyn invited their leader to come to the Houses of Parliament, the seat of our government, and to invite him in for tea and biscuits and have a chat. So a lot of conservatives are, Jeremy Corbyn's a fucking commie, commie terrorist. And there's all this kind of muddled. Well, he did that, but was that kind of a gesture of goodwill? And let's resolve these differences, and because there was obviously a lot of tensions with Northern Ireland and whatever. And then there's other stuff that maybe he didn't even do, and so my family, my dad and my granddad in particular, are gonna probably mock me as they mocked my brother previously, who also voted Labour a few years ago, for having voted for that party. But I think at least I have the self awareness to doubt my own decision, rather than there are some people in this country, and it's probably even more so in America, who will, well, I'm this, so I will vote for this.
Hmm.
It's not even policies; it's
Yeah,
identity.
that is the big problem in American politics is that you're really just voting against the person you don't like, and you're not voting for anything in particular. It's just like we've got two parties, that's it. They represent, you know, um this shitty situation or that shitty situation. You decide which you think is the, less shitty situation, and by doing that, you don't hold the party or the politicians themselves, the individuals, to any sort of metric or any sort of standard, and we end up with basically, a non-representative government because people don't run to convince anyone of things that, policies or things that need to change. They run on, it's just a popularity contest. It is just like name recognition and trying to say as little as possible so that people won't rule me out. Because if I say where I stand on abortion, strongly and openly, then there will be a certain percentage of the people who will immediately rule me out. So long as I say nothing, then I always have that, wiggle room where people can sort of decide whatever they want about me. And that's the entire tactic now. And so no one is really trying to represent anything. No one is speaking, to say that this is what we need to be doing and these are the directions we need to go. And if elected, this is what I'll do. I mean, they do the most minor amount of that that they can get away with and still be considered a politician because their ears are being whispered in by corporate types, who are, running their campaign engineers, saying, statistically speaking, every time you open your mouth and take a position, we lose voters, we don't gain them, you know, and they're not wrong, but I think that if you had the balls to take real positions and really stand for something, then you would gain votes as much as you would lose them, because you would inspire the majority of the population that doesn't fucking bother voting at this point, and they would get out believing that they had someone to that made it worth their effort, because my solution to politics is every Tuesday in November, whenever a vote comes around, I just stay home. I just there's
interesting.
yeah, I just don't vote. And I'm certainly open to voting, but I don't feel an obligation to vote. I come at it from the private markets perspective, which is that they want everything to exist because it's saleable and it's marketable, and the free market will find its own level and do the best thing because they want to make money, and so attractive products get sold, and so no one has to there's no social effort to overlook they don't want the government looking over private markets and saying, well, that's a wasteful thing to be doing when we have these problems, or that kind of a thing. But when it comes to American election cycle, suddenly that policy reverses itself. So I apply that policy to voting. Basically, I am your customer. Sell me someone to vote for, and I will happily vote. And if you don't, it is not my responsibility or my duty to vote for someone or to buy a product that I don't want.
This is interesting. This is not a opinion I've ever heard before. This is actually quite novel from my point of view of thinking about your right to vote, because I've always been taught to be ashamed for not voting. It's a democratic right. People in the past presumably died for you to be able to have this vote. So, honor their sacrifices and to stand up and be a profound contributing member of society, and cast your vote and determine how the country moves and so on. There was something I was going to ask you, which is actually in direct contrast to the sell me mindset. Do you think politics would be any worse off if we didn't give a public stage to any of the characters that inhabit it? So, effectively, each year, 4 years, whatever, every single person in the population is shown arguments from one party, arguments from another party. If you're lucky and live in a system where there's more than 2 parties, arguments from the other party. You see their manifestos and you vote based purely on policy, and you're almost not allowed to associate personality with them in any way. Do you think there's a benefit to a system like that? There's any downside to a system like that?
Yeah, I don't think American politics would work just because of the structure of our government and the way that it sort of operates today. If you could disambiguate the individual from the policy, just because our everything that goes on in our government is so individualistic. At least from the Senate on up, you can say good things about the House of Representatives on a federal level, and different things that you can say about different state governments where they openly cheat, and there's a lot of information that could go in there, but what we have just seen, what we are currently dealing with, is impeaching a very individualistic individual, who would have been in a sort of scenario where you just put forward sort of the party's policies. If the Republican Party had picked this individual, now they wouldn't, though, I suppose, in the system you're describing, they wouldn't have picked Trump at all, because if the individual is
Well,
disambiguated from the policy.
his entire appeal is being a polarizing personality, isn't it? You know, the die-hard fans who voted for him and everyone else.
But yeah, ultimately, I wouldn't. I don't think that that would really help or work in the way that our government works. And I would also be worried about the, like if it was truly disambiguated and it was more like a vote for the party, um, then you're voting for the party, and then the party votes, decides to select whom they're going to put there. And we've already got so many problems with nepotism and uh classist appointments and things like that. That no, I definitely want the individual to be a part of the process. I just want the I just want the public standards to rise to the level of, yes, but sell me that individual, like, and you
Mm.
bring forward your policies, and let's talk about them, and let's be open, and let's move a discourse forward, because at the end of the day, even if you're not elected and you don't get to go to, to do or to try and achieve what you had to do, having the conversation open and publicly is its own merit in the first place. So if you don't, on your campaign trail, actually speak to the things that you feel are the greatest issues because you're worried about losing votes, then at the end, if you lose, you've lost everything. And that's kind of how it seems to play out in American politics, is everyone is in it for the win and nothing else. It's the win and nothing else. If we lose everything. If we win, then we get to do what we want. And we, the people, never really completely understand what it is that they want, because they're not actually playing the game of politics. They're just playing the game of like demographic polling and marketing and election engineering. I've got lots of things that I could say about all this.
It's it's weird, isn't it? Because I feel like most of us would agree the ideal for democracy is that each person in that democracy says, casts their opinion for what they think society should be like, and in some fair way, we determine a course for society that utilitarian maybe maximizes that opinion, that cumulative crowd wisdom. But people matter in this process, because a party which just states its policies and then goes and does them is unrealistic. What you have is a party which states its policies, and then these people will strive to enact those policies. And so, in the same way that you wouldn't interview for a job and accept them based on a CV,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
interview for a
yeah,
job, you see the CV that gets them through the door, and then you accept them based on two questions.
yeah.
Can they do the job? Which the CV maybe says, but probably doesn't, probably lies about a little bit. And can we work with them? Who are they as a person? That's half of the importance, is who are they as a person. And it's so weird. I don't, I, I have so many, complaints, I suppose you could say, about nationalism and kind of group identity. I've never, I am English, but I've never particularly felt English. I don't really give a shit to some degree about the borders that we arbitrarily, well, in our case, it's a bit less arbitrary because it's the island we're on. But you know, I don't feel particularly a group identity with English people, and so the idea of, oh yes, we elect one person to be our representative, our supreme leader, who, the vast degree of the direction this country takes is influenced to a significant amount by this person's personality. That sounds fucking insane.
Yeah.
Why would we let one person's personality determine the fate of millions of people over the next 4 years or whatever?
Mm.
It's so ludicrous, but it's so human. If we were all robots, we would vote based on our alignments and our likelihood to be prone to agree with certain policies and whatever, and it would all be very non-charismatic. But we're humans, so we really love personalities and want to be sold on who people are and trust in a leader and that kind of stuff.
When we've got so much like deceit that just goes on, in politics generally, I think worldwide, that the idea of relying on a, certain party to disseminate its actual intentions if, given power over this particular seat. And also, like, what you were pointing out, really struck me is that, like, the goal of any government, based off of what you were saying, it just, reminded me, the goal of any government should be to represent all of the people as best as it can. And
Yeah.
yet our political systems are designed such that basically we have like several warring factions which all represent the most extreme version of a viewpoint. And if any one of them gets in, then they, represent their, rigid point as well as they possibly can for them and for their votership and the people who voted for them for as long as they hold power. And then when they lose power, it switches to the other people and then they do it as hard and equal. And it's a system where it ends up being like that because if any one of the players treats it like that and chooses to, spend their 4 years or 6 years or 8 years or however many years that they've got hold of an office as a, I've got all the power now, I'm going to do as much as I can for us and our team, as opposed to looking out on the country and saying, okay, so, 42% people voted for, my opponent, and, so let's respect their wishes as well, and
Yeah,
that kind of a thing.
The core issue is that people want to be in power fundamentally. You don't become a politician because you believe super strongly about an issue. You become a politician presumably because you believe strongly, but also because you want to be a politician. What use is a politician that never gets in power and has any say over anything? So I want to be in power. So how do I be in power? Well, I motivate a majority of people to vote for me. What's motivating to people? Not representing people that they don't like. The most motivating thing is to be like, I'm for you and only
Dick.
you. I'm the only voice who's speaking for you. And just, so yeah, the warring factions. The exact point you just made, was illustrated so strongly. And this is part of why I voted Labour for the first time. We had a public debate between Boris Johnson and Jeremy Corbyn, the two leaders of the two biggest parties in the UK. And Boris Johnson's only shtick throughout that entire debate was pointing out that Jeremy Corbyn hadn't decided who he was going to vote for in a new Brexit referendum, what he was going to vote for. Are you for Brexit or are you against Brexit? And Jeremy Corbyn would not say, and Boris Johnson kept pointing that out because how can you trust someone who doesn't say what their opinion is and blah, blah, blah. Corbyn's argument was, I will respect the wishes of the people. We'll have another referendum. We'll see what everyone thinks. If everyone votes to leave, I will fight to make sure that we leave. If everyone votes to stay, I will fight to make sure that we stay. It was a fundamentally public reflecting point of view. And that's distrustful because what kind of politician doesn't have an opinion on Brexit? You can't be a human and not form that opinion in that line of work. So what kind of person would do that? Well, you could argue maybe someone who's committed to being a public servant.
Yeah, that's exactly the word that I've been, waiting to interject, is that these are supposed to be offices of service. The running for office, trying to get appointed should be always viewed as a request being made, because like ideally you would have candidates running because they feel that they have the skills to offer and they want to do something good for the world, or for your nation, for the world at large, and just for people out there. But I think that happens rarely, and more so you just get individuals with big egos who think that they should have that office of power, and they want that title, and it's not about like, I want the opportunity to serve you because I see a bunch of other people doing it shittily, and I'd like your interests to be represented well. You get the opposite.
No,
You
it's
get,
that looks like the kind of thing
I know
powerful people
best,
do.
and you need to give me power, and then I'll set everything right because it'll be the way that I want it, which is obviously right because I'm me. Okay.
And me is sovereign. Yeah, I hate career politics. Who becomes a politician? I want to have a career in politics. Surely
Well,
the only reason you could justify is that because I have stronger ideals and I want to see those ideals become reality. And never ends up feeling like that's what any politician is striving for. Mm.
I want to talk about my Christmas wish.
Oh, good. Back on theme. Well done.
Yeah. If I had one wish that I could wish this holiday season, it would be for all the children of the world to join hands and sing together in the spirit of harmony and peace. If I had two wishes that I could wish for this
That would
holiday
be
season,
logistically very difficult, Paul. I mean,
the
all the
first
children of the
would be
world
for all
across
the
the
children
oceans.
of the world to join hands and sing in the spirit of harmony and peace.
Yeah,
And the
some of them are going to
second
drown.
would be for $30 million a month to be given to me tax-free in a Swiss bank account. And if I had three Christmas wishes that I could make this holiday season, first, of course, would be all the children to get together and sing. The second would be for the 30 million every month to me. And the third would be the all-encompassing power over every living being in the universe. And if I had four wishes that I could make, the first would be the crap about the kids. Second would be the 30 million. Third would be all the power. And the fourth would be to set aside 1 month for each year for an extended 31-day orgasm to be brought about slowly by Rosanna Arquette and that model Paulina somebody, I can't think of her name. Of course, my lovely wife would come too. She's behind me 100% on this, I guarantee. But if I had a sixth Christmas wish, I'm just reading Steve Martin's my Christmas wish from Saturday Night Live from years and years
Oh,
ago.
come on. This wasn't you. Oh, for
It's
fuck's
worth
sake.
it. It's
I thought
worth
that
it.
was I thought that was
He did
obviously
it.
I had got halfway through Googling Rosanna Arquette.
Which is why that's such an old reference to Rosanna Arquette.
Yeah, who is this person?
Mm.
Apologizes for
Random
being
Aim,
white.
thank you
Oh
for the
god.
cheer. 300 bits. Hi there, late here. Have some Christmas, some Christmas bonus. 300 bits, and let's hope we will have a thing to come back to next year, says Random Aim. Well, we will have a Harv and Pawn show to come back to. It may take a slightly different. I don't know. Like when we're in the break here, I definitely want to like sit down and just experiment again. I like experimenting. See what sort of
Yeah.
shape that we want to do. I'm been
Well,
really happy with all the little skits that we've produced, and I'd love to see to find a way that we could put more effort or more focus into that.
yeah. Yeah, no,
Without
it's worth
losing like the hours of our lives any more than we already have to producing this show.
I'm not sure if we've communicated this enough / at all actually to you guys. So Pawn and I sat down for a post-mortem to end all post-mortems a couple of weeks ago where we rethought the entire show from the ground up. And what we essentially realized was, fucking hell, the skits are the magic that are really motivating us to do anything. We're both so happy to be making encapsulated comedy episodes and being able to write and to produce and to act and to do all that stuff and to be motivated to do that a couple of times a month each. That's really the highlights for us, is the ability to motivate ourselves to do that. And I love talking on the show with you. And this isn't something I would want to give up. But we both realize that the skits should be the focus of our efforts and our time. And so, yeah, this just to let you know, this is the direction that we're kind of tending towards. And I think it's worth constantly having a rethink about the show format. Partly because I read something very inspiring about all the YouTubers who have ever made it really big were all doing it for 6 years with no one watching. before they became successful. You know, that thing.
Mm.
So objectively, we've been doing this for 4 months now. Objectively, very few people are watching. You just think about this. You are one of the few people who watches this gem of a show. You know, this absolute gem. This is a diamond in the rough, in the most literal sense you could ever possibly get that metaphor. You know, this is a show which has started, which has no signs of stopping, and we are gonna fucking polish the shit out of this until we end up with something which works in all senses of the term. And so you are one of those very few people who are in on this now. But eventually we will find something which clicks. And like we've said about consistency previously, you know, some YouTubers have been doing that shit for 6 years before they found whatever clicked for them. You know, one day it'll happen in some manner of magnitude. Might not be massive, but we'll get a jump at some point if we keep doing it. Because I can say this wholeheartedly, I believe we have the talent. You know, I think we have the personalities. I think you're as I've already said, I think you're fucking hilarious, and I think
he's been
you are
drinking too much.
woefully maybe. I'm this far through, but you don't know how much Jack was in this originally. I think you're woefully undersubscribed. I think I'm woefully oversubscribed, but underwatched right now. So I believe we have the potential to make something of this with a bigger audience than we have right now. I think we'll get there eventually. So,
By the way,
I don't know where I was going with that.
Kiddabob, thank you for breaking my brain. How do you do a backwards
Oh
Harv
shit! What the?
logo? Like, I was looking at that before Random Aim posted the like correct direction one, and I couldn't see that it was a backwards one. I was like, why is that on the? Is that back?
It's underscore. So if you hover over it, it says Harv and one porn underscore HF.
Huh.
Whereas the normal one is just Harv and one porn. Oh wait, is it this new thing where you can modify an emote? I was looking on the channel points thing, and it says
They've
modify
changed
a simple
everything.
emote.
There's channel points. Mosaic Task Force used
Oh
100
yeah,
channel points for
yeah.
after Trump. Every billionaire was like, "I'm better than this kid. I can become president." But yeah, so
There you go.
there's a way
I
to
just
modify
posted a
emotes.
black and white one, which you'll see come up in a moment. There you go. You can modify them.
So HF, horizontal flip, is what that must stand for.
There you go.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. I'll tell you what, Bon.
Mm.
Why don't we take another live stream break? Because my bladder is full.
Oh, you want to carry
And
on?
this would normally
Cool.
be the end of the show, but I would say let's just fucking carry on because I don't have work tomorrow. It's Christmas.
Mosaic Task
Enjoying
Force put a
myself.
Santa hat on the thing. He put a Santa hat on the Harvard Pod logo. Oh, that's cool. I like this part, Twitch. I don't know what the whole channel points thing is for just like it's getting people's. I don't know about that, but this is cool. I like this. Putting Santa hats
Came
on
out
and
of
stuff.
nowhere as well.
Now, if you can get us a cock and balls to be able to strap on to anything we want, well, just a strap on really is what I guess I'm talking. So we're gonna take a 7-minute break. You know,
just think about that in these 7 minutes.
Strap on to, yep. 7-minute break, and we will come back, and it's good. We're going late tonight, which is good because I wanted to talk about, what do we want for Christmas and New Year's resolutions, and we'll crack open some eggnog and do all the Christmassy stupid stuff. So we'll be back in 7 minutes. Stick with us. Harv and Pawn, not gone yet. Where's the button? There it is. Welcome back to the twitch.tv/Harv and Pawn show on the Harv and Pawnery, where Harvey is celebrating that we exist. I'm cracking my second brew.
Reputation.
There we go. Merry Christmas.
Second brew.
So
I'm still on my first. You just don't know the relative number of brews that are.
If you want to keep talking politics, I got both barrels loaded now, or we can shift and go on to Christmassy stuff.
No, let's get off of politics. Let's talk about the whatever generic bullshit you were you were describing before the break.
No, I want to do politics now. I wanted to say because we started talking about the parties and the idea of getting the people separate from the policies, and it kind of leads to the idea of voting for the party and the party's stated policies more than the individual, and how it becomes less of a ideally it becomes less of a personality war, right?
Yeah.
Our problem over here is that, like, what do our parties even represent? Like, people have ideas of what they represent, but do those ideas line up with what they actually represent? I mean, if you look at the Republican Party for what it is in America, they just put forward Donald Trump as their, front runner. They ran him and got him elected as the president of the United States of America, and that sends a message of, the Republican Party is for racist, bigotry, misogynist, infidelitous, just assholedom. And it's not just, Trump either. It's, the Senate that we have over here, the Republican leaders, when you see the things that they push and they say, they do give off that smell of just being intolerance. Like, the Republicans stand for intolerance as well as conservative fiscal policies. So it's like intolerance and backwards, like we want to go back to the 1950s because we've idealized some bullshit version of that wasn't horrible for everyone who wasn't a white, straight male or woman, having children and living in the suburbs. So there's your Republican image. And then on the other side of the aisle, because I'm no fan of the Democrats either, the Democrats, I have no idea what they stand for, honestly. Like, people have the idea that they're the counter argument, that they're the liberal, let's use the government and spend the money to aid the people and set up programs and, that kind of a thing. But when it comes down to it, the Democrats just don't really talk about what the fuck they stand for anymore, and they just seem to be the other guys. And, they seem to sit down for anything. Just the amount of hemming and hawing that has been around this very obviously necessary impeachment, shows a lack of spine, a lack of conviction, and I don't know what they actually stand for. I get a better sense of what the individuals who are, running for different offices as Democrats, what they stand for, but as a party, like, I know what the Republicans stand for, and it's all shit that I'm, it's mostly shit anyway that I'm not on board for, but the Democrats are not. They're just another party. They don't represent themselves well.
Yeah,
what am I voting for?
As a foreigner to your land, I get the same impression, to be honest. Like, I could tell you, Republicans are pro stricter border control and they're pro not allowing abortions, I guess, and I feel like I could list off a number of Republican policies, and Democrats, I'm like, I guess they're pro public health care. Like, there was the Obamacare stuff, right? That's kind of it. I mean, I'm mostly guessing at that, probably based off of my idea of what our leftish leaning party is like.
Yeah, and then even like that for like Obamacare, it's like, oh, see, that's what they're for. They're for like more public, kind of things. But then when you actually look at what Obamacare is, it's it's completely reliant on the private market. It was, in the most boiled down one line way that you could describe Obamacare, it is a bill requiring every American to buy health care from private health care providers. It's basically car insurance. You have to buy, if you're going to drive a car, you have to, buy car insurance. Okay, well, it's a choice whether to drive a car. It's not really, but you could say there's a choice there. Now we have a law where if you're a human being in America, you have to have health care and you have to pay for it out of your pocket and you have to get it from someone who provides it. And the providers are all in the private market. So it's like
That doesn't sound like
that.
what
Yeah,
Obamacare was to
the,
me,
right.
or I was told Obamacare was.
It has a different image than that, but we didn't really
Hmm.
we have a public, end of the provider, but it wasn't like a massive expansion of the public provider. The way that they managed to get Obamacare through, and get enough conservatives on board was that Obamacare was fundamentally very, very good for private healthcare business because you're now
Mm.
forcing everyone to have healthcare, which means they're going to get hundreds of millions or at least tens of millions of more customers overnight by putting this in. And what we got in trade was like some more regulations over the healthcare market and some demands made on the side of the people for things like you can't deprive someone coverage because they have pre-existing conditions, and extended coverage from family health care for people up to the age of 26 instead of just cut off when you're 18 or whatever it used to be. So we got some provisions and some overarching regulations, but it was a huge boon for privatization and the continuous privatization of healthcare. And the claim from the Democratic side and from the Obama side of things is that, well, that's the best that we could do. We couldn't have pushed anything better than that in the direction of a public healthcare solution through the American government, so we did the best version that we could. But like that's what you actually did, and you're telling me that you wanted to do something else, but your actions are, the opposite. They're not necessarily opposite, but it's like you're not representing your own interests, or the interests that you want us to believe are your interests, so that we'll keep voting for you. Those of us who are on the liberal end of the spectrum and more toward the socialist end of the spectrum, what you say does not vibe with what you do. And it's like, so I
Well, I
don't know
mean,
what the Democrats really represent, other than they seem to be another group, just like all the political parties, just like the Republican Party, of, you know, social and economic elites who think that they know best and want the power, and then they'll just make the decisions on our behalf for us.
you
And
know,
we don't need to know what they're going to do because they know best.
I don't know whether you're aware of this, but it may or may not surprise or amuse you to realize to find out that one of the big sticking points for the UK as a country is our National Health Service. And in this election, one of the big fear-mongering worries was that we would sell off bits of our state health service to America and have it be privatized and bought by American companies, and the horrors of the American health system would slowly creep their way into our lovely, idealistic British NHS.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's just like, and this is the one thing that so the accusations were leveled at Boris Johnson by Jeremy Corbyn, saying like, "Oh, you're gonna sell our health service to America," and it's the difference in center between America, or at least just a difference in culture. Everyone in England, I think you could probably say at least 90%, everyone is pro NHS. We like having public state funded healthcare that essentially you don't have to pay for health insurance. And like no one likes the American healthcare system. So even the right wing party was like, we wouldn't do that in a million years. That would be crazy. I think
Yeah, I
speaks
mean,
volumes to the American system.
a portion of why when I was saying earlier I'll be in Spain,
Yeah.
in 2020. I've been watching Cheese. I'm a speedrunner, so I watch another speedrunner, and I'm interested in Super Mario 64, so I watch Cheese, who is the world record holder in Super Mario 64 120 star, the regular, not randomizer, which is what I like to run. Um, but so he's moved to Spain, and he had dual citizenship from where he was born and from Spain because of his parents, and so he's moved to Spain, and he's just glowing about it. and he talks about, he's talked about the healthcare system and being part of Europe and how cool that is and how good that is, and said, he explained like that he has insurance, he has private insurance as well, medical insurance, and explained what that was. And I don't think I'd ever heard it, explained before what private insurance would be when you're in Europe. But it's just basically he pays a certain amount, I think it's $50 or some amount per year is paid into the insurance, and it means that if he needs to go to the doctor and he wants to go immediately, then he pays an extra $50 and he's in. And that's what insurance is. So it's like you have the base level of coverage that, if there's a line, you have to get in line and wait, but you will be seen and you will, be cared for. And if you are economically, okay enough to be able to afford extra, then, you can pay an insurer and be able to get into the system, within 2 or 3 days of needing to see, or of wanting to see the doctor. You could get in on the day that you wanted with the right insurance. And it's like, that's wow, what a reasonably sounding fair kind of system.
It's quite amusing to hear your awe at
Yeah.
how healthcare insurance works.
Because over here it's just all like you either have insurance or you don't. And if you don't, then you basically don't go to the doctor. I mean, you try to avoid it until you are right at the edge of fucking dying or just in so much misery. And then, without an insurance, you maybe you go to the hospital instead. Maybe you wait until it's so bad you go to the ER. A lot of people in America do that. They wait until it's so bad they just go to the ER. And the ER can't, reject you. They have to take you in. But you will wait in these areas, usually between 3 and 6 hours in a waiting room full of other similarly sick people before they take you back. And then you'll be there waiting probably 3 or 4 hours as they slowly get around to doing you along with everybody else who's coming in. And, you just wait until the very last minute, which actually creates more burden on the system because emergency rooms lose money as a rule. They are a cost to a hospital than they are, they don't make money for the hospital. The hospitals are all fucking private around here. So they don't make money from the ER, and then you create more load on them because people aren't addressing their health issues when they have them. They're waiting until their health issues have gotten so incredibly bad that it now necessitates a doctor's call, as opposed to being like, I'm feeling bad, I should probably go see somebody about this, which means people need more significant treatment once they finally do enter the healthcare system.
Oh, it's
just
the entire, preventative versus treat the symptoms argument, isn't it? It's stupid. Yeah. I would point out as well that as much as we all love the NHS and sunny old Britain, 3 to 6 hours to get seen, and then 3 to 6 hours, yeah, sarcastically, and then 3 to 6 hours to get anything done. That's kind of the reality that most people who go to A&E, which I guess is our ER, is ER emergency response? Is that what it stands for?
Emergency room for us.
Okay. Yeah. So same idea anyway. That is the reality that most of us have, especially around winter now. So the NHS has its problems. I think everyone is behind it principally, but it's always one of the big things in all of our elections because it's always supposedly underfunded and understaffed, and the wait times are too long, and there's too much demand, not enough supply. It's difficult to do healthcare fairly and easily for everyone, cheaply. So we have problems, many problems, and
I would love to have your problems over here. I would love to be a nation that has the problem, that has those problems fundamentally because we are providing healthcare to everyone, and so there's a lot of everyone. And, when everyone comes in, we can't quite get to everyone in exactly the amount of time. Like, that would be better than we are fundamentally providing healthcare to no one. And then when they come in and we can no longer reject them, or else we'd be in violation of our Hippocratic oaths, then we finally fucking treat them. Like, it's an important difference. It's a very important
Yeah.
difference of why you have the problems that you have. And in one of them, um people have a confidence in the ability to, go see a doctor when they're starting to feel ill and before they're on death's door, uh, without necessarily bankrupting themselves, without knowing that, okay, well, we won't be taking this year's vacation or next year's or the year after that, but I will survive.
Oh, and do you know what's even funnier than all this? In a sad way, is that so
Everything's funnier than all
we're,
this.
we're treating Britain as being kind of a cut above America. You should hear from some of my friends who have come from mainland Europe. I've got a friend who lived in Austria for a while, and he was amazed at how looked down upon going to your GP is here. So you don't really go to a GP for a checkup in Britain unless you think something is wrong with you.
Hmm.
Which that's a nice problem to have, right? You only go when you think something is wrong with you. That makes sense. But in Austria, supposedly, you go for a checkup regularly in case anything is wrong with you.
Hmm.
You know? That like that is what we need. That you can go and see a doctor routinely just in case. Like that's how you catch, early onset cancer and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
shocking too, like looking at similar things, not healthcare in specific, but like just a multitude of problems. I was just watching something about overpopulation. I think it was a Kurzgefakt situation.
Oh yeah,
Like,
kurz gesagt.
yeah,
Kurz gesagt.
I think they did one about just generically it ended up covering the topics of overpopulation and
Hmm.
a lot of statistics and a lot of different evidence of things that have been done in Africa and different places and in South Asia where they had problems with overpopulation and people having too many kids and just the loads that it puts on everything and the burdens of the money that has to go into education and how each child's education gets diminished. It was a very like macroscopic, very wide kind of, let's take the individual out of it so we don't
That
have to think
was
about how nasty it is what we're talking about is.
one of their funniest bits throughout all that entire video was how they every minute or so had to say, "We are generalizing Africa. We understand that Africa is a big place." And so, everything we're saying, take it with a pinch of salt because it's all a bit of a generalization. Yeah.
But like what they came to in terms of solutions and the things that work and everything is just like it is the most obvious common sense solution of educate people, and the more educated an individual is, the later they'll wait to like have children because they're still like building their own careers and going and having their adventures and conquering the world. Um, and doing that and then like having the education about sex and about
Well,
options
providing contraception.
for yes
Yeah.
for pregnancy preventative measures and things like that. And it's just like mainly it was the biggest thing was like as soon as they started just educating people better, birth rates went down because now people have their own opportunities in life that aren't just like momentary like enjoyment, that they see their own futures ahead and they want to have their own futures, and then at some point they decide, okay, I'm stable enough, I'm going to have children, as opposed to finding themselves in a situation where, oh, I'm knocked up. And like that popped up in my head because it sounds, it's very similar to the healthcare thing, and you're talking about going to the doctor when you're not sick to make sure that nothing's going wrong, as a very like sensible, just obvious sort of, if everyone started doing that, even though there's more regular visits, they are regular scheduled visits, and I would absolutely expect the number of emergency visits and the number of chronic, issues and stuff like that, in just dips by hundreds of thousands of cases per year, just by doing what makes the most sense, and yet, we somehow manage to convolute the most obvious reasonable solutions and come up with all these reasons why, well, we can't do it like that, and then we find ourselves, fucked. Find ourselves backwards and upside down and trying to figure out how we get out of the situation we painted ourselves into, when all we really needed was common sense in the first place.
It's kind of like what I was saying about evolution. It doesn't look ahead. We evolved to take in food, to take what was useful out of it, and then to excrete shit. And shit is a horrible thing. And it causes so many diseases worldwide, pollutes water supplies, attracts flies. It's horrible. Who wants
Smells.
that to
It's
exist?
got
Who would
corn in it
design?
sometimes.
Yeah, who would design that? It's just a rubbish, such a weird, inefficient, horrible thing that has caused so much death and stink and disgust over the course of human progress.
Plagues, Black
If we
Death.
knew, if I was God and I was designing humans and I knew that shit was going to be a byproduct, I would have redesigned that motherfucker. But that's not how evolution works. Evolution, as our society has progressed and we've ended up with a reactive healthcare system rather than a preventative healthcare system, is what I'm getting at. If you could have looked and said, oh shit, people are going to be paying thousands of dollars for private health insurance and they're only going to go to the ER when they're absolutely on the verge of death, that's stupid. Why would we design that system? These systems don't get designed, they come to be through a process of iteration, which is too short-sighted.
Before we get off the topic completely, Maffycraft said, Pawn, how does it work if you have to call an ambulance? All of what you told us sounds horrible and deadly.
You pay for it afterwards, right?
You pay for it afterwards. And in fact, like when I had the issue with the, guy who'd been beating up his girlfriend and the police wouldn't come and all that sort of stuff, on the night that I fought him in the street and he broke, boards over my head, which I stood and allowed him to do, as a fucking, here's how big my balls are, motherfucker, move. And, just looking at the boards and they were crumbling in his hand as he was lifting them. And I'm like, those are the most rotten pieces of wood I've ever seen. And this guy's picking up these 2x6s at the side of the road, rotten from weather and stuff like that. I'm like, that's going to break. And I just stood there and let him hit me. Boom. And then he went back, grabbed another one, and that one I blocked, and the other one I blocked. But, when the police came, I, was bleeding from the face because one of the boards had a staple in it and it, slapped around and broke off and connected with my face in such a way. So, by the time they were there, since they took their sweet fucking time getting there, it looked like a thing, there's blood come down and it's, dripping down my neck kind of thing from these 2 little puncture marks from, just a rusty staple. I'm sure it'll be fine. Anyway, when they had like ambulance on the scene, which I don't know that they called it out for me in particular or what, but ambulance did arrive on the scene. The dude driving the ambulance walks up to me and says, do you need to go to the hospital? Do you want the ambulance ride? And I looked back at him and I'm like, how, you tell me, I don't know, how do I look? And he says, well, let me put it this way. Do you need the ambulance ride? Which was his way of communicating to me, you should bear in mind, like, I can't tell you not to take it or to take it. Like, it was literally a fucking lawyer move from the ambulance driver.
That's so fucking sad.
Because he knows that it, like, he can't tell me not to take it because it's going to be a $1,200 or $1,500 bill for me to sit in the back of his ambulance and get driven down the road to a hospital. So it was up to me to decide whether or not I felt like I needed to go to the hospital. And I was like, no, as far as I know, I don't think I do. Guy just broke some wood over my head. Maybe I got a concussion. Maybe I'm not really like a medical professional here. You're driving the ambulance. You should have some. What do you think? And he just returned the question back to me. So that's what it is like in this country when an
Oh, I
ambulance
hate
comes.
that so much. A fucking medical professional should be allowed, whether it's rules or whatever, but they should be allowed to fucking diagnose you at least with like the severity of your condition. Because how on earth are you gonna know?
Yeah.
Did you have a mirror to see the staple in your head? Jesus.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
that's
and it's like so telling, like that moment in time, everything was right there on the surface too, because it was like I knew exactly what was going on there. Like he can't tell me, no, you're fine, like you don't need an ambulance ride, or at least that's how it looks to me, because one, he's got, legal issues if he tells me I'm fine and then I'm not later. Two, it's in his best interest in the company he works for his interest that I do accept the ambulance ride. So even if I don't need it, it's better if he just offers it to me and I say, yeah, okay, and then end up with a $1,500 bill later. Three, as like someone who might end up in some kind of court proceeding later myself, suing someone over this, incident, or being sued or something like that, then I have an interest to take an ambulance ride, which would create a paperwork trail for the lawyer that would be like, the injuries that you sustained were so serious that you had to be taken to the hospital, which wouldn't really be the case. It would
wow.
just be that I chose to, take a
Yeah.
$1,500 taxi to the hospital. But, like all of this shit is in the background, and none of this has to do with the fact that I was just in a street fight and I'm bleeding, and I don't know, what do you think? And he's just like basically not allowed to give an opinion, is how it read to me.
You know, I've only visited your great country once. I was on holiday with my parents. We went to Florida and we went to Disneyland. No, not Disneyland. We went to Universal Studios, which is right next door to Disneyland. Uh, but in one of those theme parks, went on a water slide with my dad and my brother. We were sitting in one of those dinghies. The three of you sit on the inside, and so you're facing each other as the dinghy spins around as I go down the water slide. And
Yeah, yeah.
well, it went through its tunnel at one point, so it was pitch black. Went around a sharp bend, and then as I come out the other end, we're just going down a piece of straight section, and my dad looks at me and goes, "Oh my god, Harvey, you're bleeding." And I had blood streaming from my face, and I was just as surprised as he was. I hadn't felt anything. What had happened was that we went around a sharp bend, the three of us in this dinghy facing each other in the dark, and the bend was just so that my like head had rocked forwards, just as my dad's head had rocked forwards, and I had crushed my nose on his forehead.
Holy
He
shit.
apparently hadn't felt anything. I hadn't felt anything. I must have, pulverized the nerves in my face before, before any signal reached my brain. Because it came out and my nose was broken and I was bleeding. Uh,
Wow.
so get to the bottom of the water slide and there's blood in the water and everything. And my only experience of the American healthcare system has been the employees of the water park bringing me a stretcher, asking, "Do you need a ride to the hospital? You know, do you want us to call an ambulance for you?" And me and my dad being like, "No, yeah, I'm just bleeding a little bit from my nose. Like, it's not that bad." But just this whole, because my dad's opinion at the time was that all of this was, they can't afford to be in any way liable for me getting hurt. They're
Mm.
incredibly, their main thought at that point of time must have been, oh shit, he might sue us. We
Mm-hmm.
have to make sure we provide these services, to deal with the situation. You wouldn't get that in England. That's like, oh, you broke your nose. Hey, well done. You fucking idiot. How'd you manage that? Yeah. Uh, my nose is still slightly crooked. I think it's slightly this way. Right. Got a little bit of a lump in it along the
I've never
bridge of the
noticed.
nose. Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, no, it's not kind of thing you notice at this resolution, I suppose. But yeah, in person
That's
it stands out.
really fucking interesting story. That must have been actually a little bit like, Did you say this happened in America? Because you started out by saying,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. Florida,
So
Universal
that's got to
Studios,
be
water
a little
park.
bit scary, just in terms of the idea of possibly needing medical assistance in America, knowing, just having heard the rumors and that sort of a thing. But like literally in Canada, I mean, we share the border with Canada, and if Canadians cross the border to America, they are given the option to buy border crossing insurance. Um,
Oh,
that
yeah.
will, you know, they pay some money there, but then like if something happens in America, the bills of America will funnel back to Canada's like built-in service. But if you don't buy it, well then you were in America when it happened, and I guess it's all on you, and you will be subject to the same bullshit that you don't expect because you're a Canadian, where the health systems are civilized. Um, you'll be just subject like an American. So I know a fair few Canadians who, if they know they're going to be crossing the border for more than a few hours, if they're going to be here for a vacation for a week or something like that, yeah, it's worth a couple $100 to buy the insurance to make sure you don't get lost in the fucked up American healthcare system and end up owing
Whoa.
potentially like, tens of thousands of dollars if you were in a car accident or something and you took serious injuries. The way that health bills rack up over here just by like being in a hospital bed for 3 days or something like that, uh 5 digits is easy to get to really quick.
It's crazy. The actually the Brexit is might make this different for me now in the future, but the only other healthcare I've ever needed abroad from my home country was in Spain. Funnily enough, might have been. I think it was Spain. It was one of the Spanish Isles. It might have been Lanzarote. I we were there doing scuba diving. My dad is big into kind of extreme sports and stuff, and so he took us scuba diving. And I was in a pool back at the hotel we were staying at. And I was trying to practice my equalizing, for dealing with the high pressures, just in the pool. And I came out of it, and I must have been maybe 12 at the time, but said to my dad, it's not working. I'm doing everything that equalizing is supposed to. I know how it works. I'm doing the thing. I'm blowing, and it's just I'm not equalizing. It's not working. And so he said, "Oh, okay. Well, I'll come take a look." I went under, tried to equalize, and by the time I came back up, he was just looking at me and was like, "Yeah, I know why it's not working. There's bubbles coming out your ear. You're not maintaining pressure. You've got a hole in your ear." So I had a perforated eardrum,
Oh wow.
which sucked because it meant that I couldn't then go scuba diving because being in the pool of the hotel chlorinated water was fine, but if I had a perforated eardrum and I went out into the sea and got an infection, then it could go inside my skull, and that's not a good thing.
Hmm.
So went and got a injection, some sort of antibiotics or
Steroid
whatever.
maybe, oh okay.
No, it was like an antiviral antibiotic kind of thing,
Hmm.
in case I then got. I can't remember specifically what I would have been vulnerable to, but I would have been vulnerable to something. Uh, and it was so embarrassing. Yeah, I was maybe 12 years old, and I went to a Spanish doctor, and in my memory, it was a sexy Spanish nurse. Everything you'd imagine from that phrase, voluptuous Spanish lady. Me, horny 12-year-old, not remembering the idealistic ideas that these memories have. But so she said something about lie down stomach. And so, okay, so I lay down on my back, because she said something about my stomach. And then she said, no, no, on your stomach. So I flipped over and had to pull my pants down, and she injected me with a massive needle right in my ass. And I was devastated out of shame, The sexy Spanish doctor had to inject me in my naked butt, my 12-year-old skinny ass. It was just, yeah. But anyway, the point is that all of this was covered via my European health insurance card, which I probably have around here somewhere, but might be out of date very soon. EHIC, covered for health insurance in Europe. I don't know how it's going to work after Brexit.
Yeah,
Might not be the case anymore.
that will be a question. Are you going to end up with the Canadian system of buy European insurance before you go? So earlier, Random Aim was asking, "Are you shitting us with $1,200 for an ambulance ride?" And so I double checked. I looked up on Google. I just asked it like, "What's the average cost of an ambulance ride?" And they say from $400 to $1,200 is average, plus mileage. And then if you just scroll down a little bit more, you see articles about this man's 2-mile ambulance ride costs $2,700. Is that normal? And so I think I'm actually more on what's realistically average, by saying $1,200 to $1,500, because that's the other thing about like medical, costs in America, is that you never really know what something costs, because most people are insured in some way. And so your assumption is that, your copay is that, like, your copay, and you just make assumptions about what it actually costs, but you paid what you needed to pay, and then your insurance covered the rest of it, that kind of a thing. But, like, because of this horrible, convoluted, ridiculous system, the cost of, medical services, generic, everyday blood tests and things like that, are ridiculous, because the consumer themselves isn't really involved in paying them. So you don't have to expect the average, person to just be okay with the idea of, we're going to do some basic blood work today. Is that okay? Yeah, okay. What I'm not going to mention to you is that you're going to get a bill for $1,200 to $1,500. And again, it was like 12. It can be like anywhere from $600 to $1,500 for basic blood work. We're just going to do a basic blood panel on you. That's the cost that gets charged in some way or some form to someone at some point, or maybe it's just the cost that they try and get from the uninsured in case they're not insured, and then like the insurance companies have negotiated for more reasonable price. Like, you have no idea what things actually cost in our medical industry, because your doctor will just do shit and they won't tell you what it's going to cost you. And then if you've got insurance, you never really see the dollar bill. You just see what portion of it you had to pay, and the prices are just mind fucking blowing. I, as an uninsured person, went to the doctor when my ME was first coming on to see what the hell's going on with me. He said, "We're going to do some basic blood slides, okay?" And I said, "Okay." Nobody mentioned that I was going to get a bill for $1,200 later. And I got a bill from the company that he sent my blood to do the blood panel, for $1,200. It wasn't him. He just sent it out to, a lab. And the lab billed me for $1,200. And the way that I dealt with that, being an American and knowing how the system is, I didn't do anything about it. Wait for them to, sell the debt off to a collector. And then when the debt collector contacted me and said, we're notifying you that we're going to begin collecting this debt because there are legal things that they have to do. They have to notify you first and give you 30 days to dispute the debt and things like that. When they sent it, I simply sent them back a dispute notice saying, I dispute this debt, and if you ever report it to a credit reporting agency, make sure and report that I do dispute it when you do, and this is our final contact. And because I sent that letter, the debt collector just did nothing with it. It doesn't exist. It never went on my credit report or anything. It just evaporated because I told them, I basically took all of their power away. They couldn't report it to the credit agencies without reporting that it was disputed, so it wasn't really going to be a, So I just ended up just evaporating $1,200.
Wait, hang on. I don't understand why. So even though you disputed it, why wouldn't they go to the credit company and try and push through to dispute your dispute? What's stopping them from continuing that process? Is it not worth it?
They are not allowed to harass you with letters and bills and stuff like that when you tell them to stop under law. And I started out by telling them to stop. Like, my first contact was, this is the last time that, we will communicate. Don't send me anything about this ever again. So don't talk to me. And because the debts are handled in such a way that there is an industry of debt buying in America, especially around medical debt. These companies, they acquire these debts in like a giant roll of things that went unpaid, and the amount of money that they pay for them is not like pennies on the dollar, it's like pennies on the thousands of dollars. So they don't have a lot of investment, into the debt that they're buying. And so basically I just made it really, I refused to participate, and I cut off all of their legal rights in the process by sending them one letter. And it was like, well, we could, I presume on their end, it's like, well, we could either continue to try and harass this individual and work the angles that we can, work legally, or we could just fucking throw it in the trash and move on to the next one in the list. And when they get someone on the other end of the phone, which is far more often, they'll find somebody on the other end of the phone or on the other end of, a letter who they're intimidated by this. They're intimidated by this process and all that kind of stuff. They want to protect their credit report and credit scores and stuff like that. And so they'll start participating with the process, and they'll start like, well, what do I need to do? Well, could I pay less? Like, is there, because I can't afford this, and they'll start participating. It's basically a shakedown. Like, medical debt buyers are basically a legal scam organization that, just shakes people down for money that someone says that they owe, that sometimes they owe and sometimes they don't. And they just shake people down for as much as they can get. And I just made it really inconvenient for them to do any of that, so they went on to the next sucker on their list.
It's incredible the sheer quantity of bullshit that has to come about in order for this system to exist in the first place. But given that this system exists in the first place, I love that you were billed for $1,200 and then you just turned around and said, nah. And then that disappeared. Fucking love that. Wex123 at Harv and Born asks, are the two of you gay? No homo. Just seems like something to ask at this moment.
I've been trying to convince him for years, but no.
Even before you knew me.
What did Random Aim say? Is your insurance detailed? Does it say the value for ambulance? Over here, it may be 10 to 25 euro on private insurance. I actually don't have any direct experience with that because I've never, as an adult, if I've been under insurance, it's always been, from my parents. So since I've become an adult, I have never had, medical insurance, and I've just avoided the doctor. Like, I've seen the dentist more often, and I haven't seen the dentist very often since I have been an adult than I have been to a doctor. Any time that I have been to a doctor as an adult, it was like one of my parents concerned who had to drag me there because there was no way that I was going to willingly step into this hellscape of American medical, bullshit, basically. And I don't have a lot of faith either in our, medical professionals, just generally speaking. So, they're like, our whole medical industry has reduced itself to the point where like everything is for cash, everything is for money. It's all built on the privatization of it and the massive debts that doctors come out of their education in this country. Like they are they've turned themselves into McHealthcare. It's a drive-through window. I need to get you in. I need to get you out. I need to collect your $120 office visit. And I need to keep moving people through. So it's like if you actually have a problem that requires anything more than, oh, you've got the flu. Here, let me give you a shot. Here's some, this to take. If it's anything that is actually like what they went to school to study for to be able to diagnose and treat something complex, you're not going to get that unless you're fucking rich. Because they don't have the time to spend, whether they want it or not. They don't have the time to spend with you. They have such high bills of operation and their massive debt and their expectation of income as well, inflated as that is in America. It's something that the reason why people wait until they're on death's doorstep in this country to go to the doctor is because that makes sense in this system. And that's sad to say, but it does. That is like the most logical thing to do, is wait until it's really bad and you're worried. And it's not just, I think I'm sick. Oh, I need to spend a couple of days in bed and not go to work. Wait until you're fucking dying and then go to the doctor. Like, with the, between the quality of the care that you will receive and the costs of it to you, that's kind of what you ought to do. I mean, it isn't. It absolutely isn't if you have any other option. But under these situations, like, what are you gonna do if you're not, middle class or better? If you're in the lower, really, I'm gonna say 60% of the country, as I feel like there are more people below the middle class threshold, or in the lower middle class threshold than there are at middle class and above. But I don't know what the statistics are. What are you gonna do? I mean, your best call is to wait until it's just absolutely fucking necessary.
And that is the sad reality that you live in. And so to end this show on a happy note, yeah, I think it's 20 past midnight for me now, and I'm getting up at 6 a.m. So,
oh Jesus,
time
that's right.
to
You're traveling
yes,
tomorrow, aren't you?
Yep, I'm driving, so it's a good thing I didn't drink a third of a bottle of Jack Daniels tonight. So. Good thing that didn't happen.
Well, just make sure you saved a little bit for hair of the dog tomorrow morning.
I'm not going to drink that tomorrow morning, don't worry. Defragted. Oh, I understand. It's Defrag Test Driven Developments asks, have you been to Darmstadt, Germany this year? Sadly not, I'm afraid. You made eye contact with someone who was not me, it seems. I apologize. But hey, maybe I'll go to Germany at some point. I'm considering learning German, so I might see you eventually.
And I agree, Dusty923. Definitely on board for that.
Yes, no, I agree with that as well. Make essential healthcare for profit illegal.
Is there any way that we could close, like, really briefly on, do you have any, like a in the new year, or, like a looking forward into the future kind of a thing that you're like, this is what I want to see out of 2020, or this is where I want my life to go, or anything like that?
I have some really menial ones. So I've actually made good for this is kind of the first year that I've made good on New Year's resolutions. From what I remember, my 2018 ones were work on a novel or game and have something finished by the end of the year. And I did half a novel, but that's quite a lot. It's 76 pages long, so it's significant. And to stick with reading books, and I did read quite a few books this year. So really, for me, I have like very specific amendments to those New Year resolutions. One of them might have been to go to the gym or something generic like that. And I am going to the gym, but I would like to do more cardio at the gym. Because currently I just do strength stuff, and I'd get in there and I'd throw weights around and I'd leave. I don't really care at all about my cardio, but I've noticed that, I like every time I go home, I usually end up going back to my old karate class that I did for many years. I am so much less fit. I have so much less stamina than I used to have back then. Weight training is it's just strength I'm doing, and there's no needing to tolerate the cardiovascular pain. Yeah, none of that. So I need to get on top of that. I'm going to try and do that next year. And then the other thing is, I think honestly, just to on the theme that I've mentioned a few times, appreciate and respect the things I make for what they are, and to be a bit less personally involved, or at least less personally motivated, and to see things through to the end in order to make them what they could be, rather than if I'm still incredibly attached to it or not. So I want to try and put that into practice and to finish more of our skits and to finish more of my own projects, like this song that I'm working on, that we're ish working on,
Yeah.
and that kind of stuff. I want to see things through. Is my overriding thought.
Mm.
What about you?
Well, all I've really got is that I am thinking right now, because of how hard this winter has hit me and my health condition, that if I have a resolution for 2020, it is that I will not be in Michigan by winter 2020. That I don't want to do another Michigan winter. It gets cold, I don't get as much sunlight, and I was doing just fine until winter really started to settle in here, and it has really thrown me for a loop. So if I have a New Year's resolution, and I'm not completely committed to this, but I really really fancy the idea, it would be to get the hell out of the States. It would be to move to Spain, maybe. I would love to be in Europe.
Well,
And not
even
Europe
before
the
you said that,
continent, but Europe the union. The political
even,
union.
yeah, even before you said that, random aim said porn in Spain for 2020 confirmed. Yeah.
That's what I'm going for. I mean, it would be nice, just temperate weather, reasonable cost of living is what I hear. Lovely culture, relatively easy language to learn. I've got some background in it already, so it's like it does kind of fit. And
And hey, you'll be like maybe $100 plane ticket away from me.
yeah, and I've
Yeah.
got that's the other thing, is that I have no cost of getting to Europe because I got flyer miles, for ages, so I could probably go to Spain and then come visit you 2 or 3 times and not have bought a single plane ticket. Flyer miles falling out my asshole.
Hell yeah. And on that note, thank you very much for watching Harv and Porn. This puts an end to season 1. Thank you for the 25 emotes. Holy crap, 25 emotes.
Wow,
That's probably
2000
everyone watching and then some.
2019 bits from Little Magnets. Thanks for 4
Holy
months of
cramoly.
entertainment, or what this is classified as, Harv and Vaughn. Whatever it
Thank
is
you,
you're
little
doing here,
magnets.
yes, thank you very
Yeah.
much. 2019 bits. All right. So join us back here on what'll it be? It'll be on
Oh,
January
oh,
8th to
yeah.
donate 2020 bits.
No, I think it'd have to be 2020 December, whatever, to round off the 2020s. But yeah, and you know what? I think this will keep going. I think we will be here in a year's time having this discussion about 2020. I got a good feeling. So
Hmm.
thank you to everyone who has supported us for our season 1 first 4 months. And please stick around during the break. We'll be back. What did you say? 8th of January,
I think that's
2020?
what it came up. It was at the 8th? Yeah, 8th of
Yeah, I think
January.
you're right. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, we'll be back with a new and improved Harvenborn. So have a good Christmas. Hope you enjoy your time. If you want to support the show, you can either cheer 2019 bits right now in chat, or you can cheer whatever amount you like, or you can support us on Patreon, patreon.com/Harvenborn, or you can subscribe on Twitch, twitch.tv/Harvenborn, which you're probably on right now unless you're on YouTube. And you get access to various behind the scenes and various votes and polls and so on. If you enjoyed the show, please consider doing that. Otherwise, thanks for watching. Thank you, Ronan Bourne, for lending your talent and expertise to this show and making it what it is. Thank me, Harvey. I'm just immensely incredible. I'm really a true model for all humans. and I have graced you, your ears and your eyes. Oh, here we go. 300 bits from Random Aim. Wow. Oh, that's clearly true then. Everything I've just said has been validated. And we will be back in the new year. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.
That's not. I clicked the wrong button, Harvey. I clicked the wrong. I clicked the.
Okay.
Oh, here it is.
And we'll see you in 2020.
Harv, porn, Harv, porn, Harv and porn, and 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 Harv and porn. Harv and porn.